Testing 1, 2.
Call to order the Friday, February 10th session of the State Board of Education. Welcome, everybody, and good morning. We'll start off this morning with a series of reports, beginning with the Priority Schools second quarter progress reports from the last year. Dr. Wild, you're recognized.
Richard Wild, Program Administrator, School Improvement Unit. I think the State Board is well aware that every quarter we ask the schools that were identified in priority status to submit a report on their leading indicators. This morning we want to take a few minutes and just highlight for the board some of the common areas of improvement that we're working with the districts on, and to give a little more background understanding related to leading indicators. And to do that, I've asked a couple of the members from the School Improvement Unit to come forth and do that.
Thank you.
Tia Frazier.
Good morning.
I'm Tia Frazier from School Improvement. And we do want to go back in time just a little touch. As you all know, we have strengthened our reporting process over the last few years for priority schools. Just kind of an evolution over time based on some feedback that we've received from the board, as well as a way for us to guide priority schools into what things we want on their report. And so today's information will kind of be the background, the current findings, and then sort of our plan or next steps for the way School Improvement's currently working. As you can see on the screens, if you can see them where you are, these are some of the things that we're currently asking for on our 45-day progress report, which is that schools will set annual academic goals that are aligned to their vision so that students will be college and career ready. And after that assessing takes place, then they would have developed a plan to accomplish those goals, and they would monitor and analyze that data along the way throughout the quarter in order to determine if the efforts they are making in real time are making an impact on the leading indicators, and that they would submit those 45-day progress reports in a timely manner to the Office of School Improvement, and that they would be receiving instructional support from their districts. In doing our research for School Improvement, we came to a resource called Data First, and Data First is a grant from the National Center for Public Education, and they are in partnership with the National School Board Association, and it was launched in 2006. The purpose was to provide practical information and guidance and break down educational terms and jargon for the lay member and specifically for school board members. As we looked at the Data First website, we came across a data cycle that is similar to our process of assessing, planning, and monitoring for school improvement. And then it had a specific piece that was about getting baseline data in order to create your school improvement plans. And this has a specific piece about leading indicators. So we're going to take about 3.5 minutes, and if Kimberly will click on the little link at the bottom of that page, I think she's got it pulled up somewhere else. We'll listen to a little clip about leading indicators and how that ties into our current reporting process.
Thank you.
When you are looking at data, you're asking one basic question. How are we doing? You want to know if students are lagging behind or leading the pack. Well, data about student progress comes in two kinds, leading indicators and lagging indicators. We look at both today and see what they can tell us. Lagging indicators are the types of education data you are most likely familiar with. They're the big standardized tests required by the state, or perhaps things like the SAT, ACT, or advanced placement tests. Lagging indicators are available after the fact, sometimes long after the fact, when it is far too late to change the results. Lagging indicators, in fact, are much like an autopsy. They can help us learn and understand what mistakes were made and what might need to change, but they can't help us do anything about the results they report. Leading indicators, on the other hand, are like a doctor's diagnosis. They provide immediate feedback and information that can allow us to change course, provide timely interventions, or even institute preventative measures. Some examples of leading indicators are quarterly grades, discipline and attendance records, practice test results, or reports from intervention programs. In fact, you can identify just about any kind of leading indicator as long as you can measure it and you are sure it will tell you if you are on track toward your goals. Leading indicators are all about changing results for the better. That is why an in-house leading indicator system is a critical part of a school's data system. If a school is continually receiving results from leading indicators, such as quarterly grades or discipline records, that school can then analyze those results and provide interventions specifically tailored to improve those results before those crucial end-of-year tests. To put such a system in place, schools have to build up their data infrastructure. Here are some different examples of types of information about students schools usually have. Think about this. Which of these does your local school have in an electronic format? And if so, can the different formats all communicate with each other? Keeping the information in separate silos will bring about no improvement. Only by being able to combine these information will you get a true picture of what's going on in your local school. Now, don't get me wrong. Even though we've focused on leading indicators in this lesson, both leading and lagging indicators are useful. Truly effective data systems include both lagging and leading indicators. You'll see places for both in the data cycle, which is a separate Learning Center lesson. But leading and lagging indicators do serve different purposes. Lagging indicators tell us whether, at the end of the journey, we succeeded or failed. Leading indicators act as a compass telling us if we are on course and whether course corrections are needed. Take time to look at and think about whether your schools have got both leading and lagging indicators represented in a useful data system, because you can't know where you are going or whether you've gotten there until you look at the data first.
Can you click back to our PowerPoint? Thank you. So as you can see, the intention of our 45-day progress report has many of the same leading indicators on it that were just mentioned. And knowing what you probably know about the agency is that the GPS dashboard combines many of the systems that were there for us already. So schools have access to that data in one system. That 45-day progress report asks for some leading and a few lagging indicators, like how many students are behind 3 years or more for EL enrollment, students with disability enrollment, and you'll see there's a little asterisk next to a couple other things on there. But that purpose is that they will have there'll be purposeful discussion in the school improvement leadership teams along the way, so that decisions can be made as opposed to waiting at the end of the quarter and then collecting that data. Dr. Tony?
I'm Robert Tony. I'm one of the school improvement specialists with the school improvement unit. As we received the 45-day reports and as we reviewed the second quarter 45-day reports, we found some commonalities among the reports. And Some of those were from our on-site reviews and on-site conversations, observations. We felt like that a lot of the work that was being done on the school campuses was better than their reports might have indicated. Some of the schools that we felt like were doing a pretty good job, maybe their reports were not as thorough as we would like for them to be. Also, the schools and districts that eagerly embraced the school improvement process were well on their way to developing some effective systems, and that should lead to school improvement. We also found some areas. Good. I didn't do anything, but I'm glad it did. We also found some areas that we felt like were in need of improvement. One of those being that the principal's narrative we felt like should have been more closely tied to the data that they included later on in the report. That the school improvement leadership teams should have provided a more thorough articulation of the significant decisions that they made during the quarter, and also an explanation of why that team thought that what they did was significant or important. The data on several of the reports addressing the 3-week instructional units was inconsistent. We were not sure if that meant that the reports were inconsistent. We felt more likely that the implementation and development of those 3-week instructional units was something that still needed to be emphasized and worked on. And the 45-day, the template that we use has a section for clarifications and comments, and in lots of the places, those that clarity was not provided to the as well as it should have been, so that we could understand the data better from those teams.
Hi, Teresa Rambo, School Improvement Unit. I'm also a School Improvement School Specialist. And some of the follow-up actions that we take after the analysis and review of these reports would be that the team members will create a plan of action for each priority school, and the assigned team members then get together as a school improvement unit, and we collaborate to provide and receive the feedback and some guidance. So in working with the individual schools, we're still a cohesive unit, that we go out with the same message of improvement to our school. We use progress reports, we use the minutes and agendas from the school improvement leadership teams for that analysis of each one. Excuse me. The analysis then will drive our internal PD so that we're providing continuous improvement for the support that our unit provides each school. Thank you. Dr. Wild?
So the 4 reports that are submitted over the course of the year also become the essential groundwork for the next year's needs assessment. So the areas where the plan of improvement did not show progress would be an area that you would analyze and say, as a school district and as a school, our plan did not significantly impact this area on our leading indicators. So not only is it a good historical document, not only is it a good way for schools to look at leading indicators, it is also a great document that lays the base for the needs assessment for the next year. You have all of the reports in your packet, and unless there are no specific questions, that concludes our report.
Thank you so much. Yes, Lisa, you're recognized.
How far into the year do the schools typically get their test results, the lagging indicator?
Typically, they will get the preliminary data as early as June now.
Okay.
And so they have a window of opportunity to correct the data, but they have the preliminary in June.
So if a district wanted to or requested that y'all plan some early before school PD around what that demonstrated, that would be an opportunity at that time based on the lagging indicators?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zook. Additional question? Yes, Ms. Newton.
I know yesterday we had several schools that exited off academic distress. Are there going to be any that will exit off priority or focus, or are those in the pause?
That would be a question, I believe, for Mr. Harvey.
Whoever pops up.
Yes, we're currently working on, we talked with Dr. Arola the day before yesterday, and as soon as we got through this phase, we'll be running the calculations using the concordance method to look at the priority schools next to make the determination.
So there could be some of
there
them
could
that
be.
come off this list then?
Yes, ma'am, there could be, based upon 2 years' worth of meeting their goals.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Additional questions or comments from the board? Yes, Ms. Zook.
The things that parents get concerned about, like safety and engagement and accessibility to administrators or teachers or the central office staff, those are typically things that just sort of come along as you work with a district, or that has to be more intentional from the local level itself?
We would consider that to be more intentional for the district and the school to address. However, one piece that we have added this year and are seeking to refine is that feeling tone about the school's culture. So we have started asking the schools to administer, at least for the first 3 quarters, surveys to both staff and students,
Right.
asking about feeling tone. And while it's not necessarily a true measure or an accurate, at least ways it gives indicators as to how people are feeling about levels of support, both the teachers and the students.
And the principal then could in turn come up with a survey for parents?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, additional questions? Then thank you so much, Dr. Wild, and your entire team.
Very clear. It was very clear.
No, thank you, and tremendous, tremendous progress. Again, to see the whole evolution, I know we've said this over and over again, but to see the whole evolution of this process from where it started to where it is now. Again, not just laudable for the state of Arkansas, laudable for the country. Thank you. So moving on to the progress reports as related to the districts classified in academic distress. We will begin this morning with the Dollarway School District. Dr. Wild, you're once again recognized.
Richard Wild, School Improvement Unit. The change from last year to this year is that districts that are within state authority, we ask them to report. And this year what we've done is we've broken those reports into segments as we go through the year. The first quarter, we asked the building principals to come before you and report on their plan of improvement and the steps that they were taking based off of the recommendations. This morning, we're asking the district leadership to report on 3 questions, and those 3 questions basically were, what's the professional development plan for the principal to make sure that the principal is developing into a turnaround principal? The second question is, what steps have been taken to identify highly effective teachers and to retain those highly effective teachers at the school site? And the third question is, what steps have you taken to verify that the written curriculum is the taught curriculum? And so that said, I'll turn it over to the superintendent from Dollarway.
Good morning, all.
Good morning, Ms. Warren. Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Barbara Warren, Superintendent of Dollarway School District, and we have a mantra in the district. It's a new day. in Dalloway. And that's quite true for our district in so many ways. Our principals are very caring, dedicated individuals who have served the district a number of years. However, each of them are in different buildings with different grade configurations, and I think you know that. We've shared that. And because we're in the process of rebuilding our district, from what seems some days like from the ground up, we are assessing our needs and envisioning what our district can and should be. Because of the unique set of circumstances and the major sweeping shifts we've made, we've begun our work and supported the principals with somewhat a mirrored plan of support, embarking on a new curriculum system, new configurations, new staff, and other new day realities. We have been working hard and learning many of the same things together as we work to establish a new common institutional knowledge, because we've had a lot of transitions, and an institutional knowledge bank is very important. So as we establish that, we've focused very heavily on a few things. One of them has been joint instructional leadership training for all of our district and building level administrators, teacher evaluation training and support through ADE, Equitable Access Program, and providing a variety of leadership principles and solution sessions in a point-in-time type of training and intervention support way. Now, these sessions are designed to help the principals and other members of our academic team access real-time information, resources, and technical assistance as we go forward meeting the pressing need to be tooled for today's situations, to have information and to have support. As a topic for support is identified, or as training request or need or assessed, maybe even a question may come up or arise as we go. We work really hard to assess the resources we have and the resources around us, and we try to address that need. Most Mondays during our weekly district leadership meetings, we have our opportunities to maximize student learning section of our meeting. And we'll hold a variety of training topics. These could range from having the ALE director or the behavior specialist from the co-op to provide us some technical assistance, or maybe updates on computer science standards, maybe even have an ADE come in and do a 504 training like we had recently. We'll find that there'll be questions that come up as we go. We'll find that professional development plans will be really, really good, but day to day there are concerns and issues, and we're trying to provide point-in-time support. So I'm looking really forward to a recent development I want to highlight before I bring the team up to share with you more about those questions. Looking really forward. We, in a request to ask for some support in a discussion Dr. Wild and I had, he says, what is your analysis, Ms. Warren, as you consider the major need in this district? What's your analysis of your major need? And it's really hard to narrow down, but I said, data analysis for instructional impact. Some of us are at varying levels of proficiency at analyzing data, and even in that, many of us need more support in the way of analyzing data and using the results to impact instruction down to the classroom level. It's really easy to talk about data and to present it and put it on the table. How does it factor down to the actual student level? This seemed to resonate with Dr. Wild as we were talking and got really, really excited about this. And we literally planned to come forward with the school improvement unit to have them come and provide support and technical assistance to address this need. This month we will literally begin sessions that will help us. They will literally come and work with our academic teams from each of our buildings. Not just the two who are in priority, but also our third elementary building. Work with all of us, our district administrators and school teams. So very excited, and I expect this will be one of the most meaningful professional development support actions that our principals could have and that we could provide at this time. We've submitted information on the actions relative to recommendation 3. And I have members of our district leadership team who will respond in short to each of those 3 questions. And of course, we'll be available for questions. They are Dr. Melvin Bryant, who's our deputy superintendent, Ms. Tammy Dockett-Wilson, who's our assistant superintendent, and our locally hired school improvement specialist, Ms. Rosie Clayton. And they will all share in that order in response to those questions.
Good morning. I am not Dr. Bryant. I am Tammy Dockett Wilson, Assistant Superintendent, Dalloway School District. And the reason I'm standing first is I have question number 1. Okay, so we're going to go in sequential order with responding. So my question was, what specific professional development has been provided to the principal to help him or her become a turnaround leader? What additional professional development will be provided in the second semester of the school year? The Dalloway School District have experienced a variety of transformations over the course of the year, and we are still moving forward with more transformations to come. The district cabinet, which consists of Ms. Warren, Dr. Bryan, and myself, decided to have a streamlined professional development plan for the leaders after careful reflection on the following: historical data trends, reformations of the curriculum, staff and student morale, creation of new district systems, changes in grade level configurations and/or locations, as well as the school and district culture. Consequently, the professional development for the building leaders were identified as one that needed to be provided across the district for all the leaders, which included the assistant principals and their dean of students as well. This approach was taken to support the thought of resetting the district on a course that would lead to solidarity in their understanding and continuity in approaches. Having this clear focus led us, the district leadership, to provide the following professional development for the principals to help them become a turnaround principal. First, we had the mission and vision, led by me, Assistant Superintendent for Dalloway School District. This 4-hour course was targeted for instructional building leaders and other district department leaders to gain an understanding of the differences between a mission statement and a vision statement. By the completion of the course, a draft of a district mission and vision statement was created for the leaders to use as they prepared to lead their respective teams in creating both mission and vision statements. The draft the leaders used was a compilation of the collaboration of all the leaders. This professional development was provided because without a vision, we know the people will perish. And we must all know and understand the work, which is the mission that must be done to bring the vision to fruition. Next, we had an Instructional Leadership Institute. This institute was led by Mr. Jim Miles, Senior Associate, Instruction and Leadership Coach, Professional Services from the International Center for Leadership and Education, known as ICLE. There was a 5-day course. Day 1, Leading Change for Rigorous and Relevant Learning. This 1-day course was designed for building leaders and teacher leaders to take a deeper look at creating effective learning environments through the lens of the Daggett system for effective instruction. Leaders learn best practices for leading change to build a culture of rigor, relevance, and relationships for all students. Even though relationship is mentioned last, we know that's the most critical point with those students having relationships with those teachers and building leaders. Day 2, Developing and Implementing Rigorous and Relevant Instruction. This 1-day course for instructional leaders focused on building a supportive, collaborative process with instructional staff to increase levels of rigor and relevance in their teaching and students' learning. Through a system-wide approach, instructional leaders who are highly engaged in teaching and learning can effectively support teacher growth and success with the new standards and assessments. Day 3, Integrating literacy in math practice areas to raise rigor and relevance. So you'll constantly see that rigor and relevance was a theme. This 1-day interactive course focused on the role of leadership and supporting teachers to integrate more engaging literacy and math strategies into daily instruction in all content areas. Leadership teams focused on state standards and ACT Aspire and how they align with the rigor relevance framework. Through this lens, leaders learned engagement strategies and how they can best coach their teachers to help all students become engaged in their learning. Day 4, Facilitating Data-Driven Decision Making. In this full-day interactive course, instructional leaders learned how data and how it is collected and used at district, school, classroom, and individual student levels. Participants discussed their roles and responsibilities as leaders and the use of data to make decisions. They observed and focused best practice and shared best practices in developing productive data teams and building the processes to analyze data and how to effectively monitor data to increase student achievement with the Common Core state standards and on next generation assessments. I know the state has moved away from Common Core state standards. However, they were very rigorous in the expectation. We know we have our framework, and we're still using that framework, but we kept that rigorous piece in place because we need that rigor as well. Day 5, leading professional dialogue to support rigor and relevance. This one-day course training was designed to allow building leaders and teacher leaders to take a deeper look at their roles in encouraging interconnectivity and collaboration through professional dialogue. By establishing and driving a supportive, professional environment, leaders can effectively communicate with teachers about increasing rigor and relevance to ensure student success on the state standards and next generation assessments. Then finally, we moved into equitable access, and there was a premium Bloom Board support. And this is led by our own Dr. Diane Gathright, education consultant. Last summer, Ms. Warren volunteered to participate in the Equitable Access Grant that was offered through Ivy Pfeiffer's office. This grant gave the district's administrators and instructional building leaders premium Bloom Board support, services, and sessions meetings with Dr. Gathright throughout the year. The purpose of the grant is to ensure quality teachers and leaders are working in schools with high minority or low socioeconomic levels. During the fall support sessions, the building instructional leaders experienced the use of insight reports, video observation tool, observation engine, and other aspects of Ed Reflect and observations, Bloom Board resources, and micro-credentials. Moreover, gaining an understanding of Ed Reflect use, how to use the system for classroom walkthroughs, how to connect InduStar, Ed Reflect, ACCEPT, eSchool, and GPS dashboard to make them useful tools instead of standalone requirements. That goes back to that silo that I heard Ms. Frazier in her video refer to. So we're trying to link things together. Arkansas Educational Services Cooperative, known as the Co-op to us. We had Arkansas Bloom Board training there, sponsored by Janie Hickman. The building leaders received more depth on goal setting for individuals, leaders, teams, as well as many more important aspects of Ed Reflect, Bloom Board, and the test/leads models. Dollarway School District Smart Start Guide, Instructional Facilitators Role and SAM. This session was led by Dr. Melvin Bryant, Deputy Superintendent, and by myself, Tammy Dockett Wilson, Assistant Superintendent. This Saturday session, and I did say Saturday, all day, was designed to assist building leaders and instructional facilitators with how to set, support, and monitor expectations for classroom management, transitions, and student accountability. In addition, the leaders had an interactive session with the data management system that houses the reading and math interventions and those inventories as well, and other data points that can be used to inform decision making. So that occurred in the fall and up to December. So for spring 2017, what are we planning to do for the second semester? Each principal, along with their respective assistant principal and or dean of students, will participate in 2 book studies, one titled Mindset by Dr. Carol S. DeWeck, and The Leadership Secrets of Santa Claus by Eric Harvey, thanks to our Mr. Tolbert over there somewhere. He was in the room earlier. Now, the focus of the Mindset book study would be understanding the importance of having a growth mindset and how to accomplish developing a growth mindset, And the focus of the Leadership Secrets of Santa Claus book study will be centered around developing leadership skills and how to become a better manager, teacher, or coach, which will create as well as support the foundations of great management. Along with the book studies, the principals will receive one-on-one individual coaching from Mr. Jim Miles from the International Center for Leadership and Education, ICLE. Additional professional development from Dr. Diane Gathright on Bloomboard will continue. During the spring semester, format of support for the professional development with Dr. Gathright can vary based on districts and/or building leaders' needs. Some of the support will consist of working with individual buildings to focus their work on improving instruction in their building and conduct focus walks to ensure consistency. The district and building leaders are reminded to keep in the forefront of their mind that this support is designed to provide a better and deeper understanding and how the system works, how to use it to assist them in documenting and gathering artifacts needed for teacher support and evaluations. Furthermore, the purpose of the work is to ensure that leaders and teachers understand that this is about consistent improvement rather than just evaluation. Dr. Bryant.
Melvin Bryant, Dalloway School. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I have a question too, which reads as follows. Which steps have been taken by the district to identify effective teachers and to retain those teachers moving forward in the 2016-17 school year? The district recognized that in order to identify effective teachers in teaching, and we must have a reliable observation process in place. And this is how we roll out that. Each week, currently, we do focus walks with our certified personnel and certified observers in the classrooms to look at the two domains that's based on tests. And those domains are the teaching for student learning and environment for student learning. It also known that having more than one set of eyes in the classroom, doing the observation and looking at the same domains at the same time has proven to be very effective. We have been fortunate enough to work with the Office of Intensive Support with Mr. Talbert and Ms. Streeter in conjunction in developing a focus walk model that has been crosswalked to test. What we do when we do those focus walk weekly, throughout the week, we do a pre-conference with the administrators, at which time we find out whether or not they would want us to look at a specific teacher who may be having problems or a content area. And after the observation, we sit and analyze those two domains, look at what we have discovered, share recommendations to give back to the teachers, and then we look at whether or not there are any barriers that we can help remove from in terms of the perspective of the administrator or barriers that the teacher may have related to the administrator prior to our visits. So that those walks take place every week, and as we do those walks, we discover that giving the feedback to administrators as we exit our conference, and they relay that information on back to the teachers in terms of improvement. We have our evaluation model based on tests, and our administrators have been trained, and we're in ongoing training currently with the teacher support. Dr. Gathright is training us. We're looking at how to effectively observe and evaluate teachers. We're trying to get to a point where we're all looking at the same thing, doing the same time. We are validating what we see as our results to make sure that we are in line with each other as we go through and walk through the evaluations. And looking at that model, we sit with each other and discuss what we see. If you're familiar with the 360 model that was in the old Teachscape, that's what the observations look like. And as we do the online observation, coming back and discuss what we see in order to get us all on the same page, in order to look at what the Charlotte Danielson model looked like, is which the evaluation instrument is based on. And the second part of that is after identifying how do we support and retain these effective teachers. Recruitment and retention is and will be our greatest challenge. Some of the things that we are doing now, including our teachers in our discussion and our decision making, embedding our common planning time for teachers, establishing some support through their PLCs, validating good instruction, supporting their mentoring and their buddy system for those teachers who are not in the official mentoring process. We assign buddy teachers, allowing teachers to do peer tutoring and peer visiting of each other, and bi-monthly roundtable discussion with new teachers to find out and address their concerns and moving forward. Looking at next steps, we're looking at more incentives in terms of doing some in-district thing to encourage our teachers to stay with us, which is an ongoing challenge since there are 4 districts in our city and we are all 4 competing for the same group of teachers. It becomes a challenge. Questions for me?
Thank you. I think there may be, is there one more speaker for your district? Wonderful. So we'll compile the questions for the end. Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Rosie Clayton from the Dalloway School District. And
If you could pull down the microphone a little bit. Thank you so much.
And I have question number 3. It reads, what steps have you taken to verify that there's a written curriculum in math and ELA? And how are you verifying that the written curriculum is being taught in accordance with the pacing? The Dalloway School District has partnered with Harcourt to provide a comprehensive systemic PK curriculum for the entire district, which goes far beyond purchasing a curriculum. It provides components of what we teach and also the resources that we use for teaching. The state-approved curriculum helps us to ensure the required Arkansas standards and the curriculum expectations are met. The district has provided components of the curriculum to each math and ELA teacher, and verifying that these components are in place and they are being used within their classrooms. And we observe this through observations, we observe it through our walkthroughs, and we also have a regular HMH consultant who visits the buildings to also monitor as well. Math and ELA staff has been trained and given the necessary materials for implementation of the curriculum. Dalloway School District has provided a math and ELA teachers with the support to assist them in their pacing. One of the tools is their daily instructional guide, which is embedded in their curriculum. This tool helps teachers to protect the time and their literacy block by delineating minutes of instructions and their activities. The district has also developed a Smart Start guide, and this guide implementation will reinforce students' time on task and the transition from subject to subject, which are direct correlations to students' success. The district is also in the process of developing a new pacing guide for our curriculum. And this guide will include all of Arkansas standards to go along with our new curriculum. Teachers and the administrators are involved in this process.
Perfect. Thank you. Ms. Warren, do you have any final words? Otherwise, we will open it up to questions and comments from the board.
I'll just listen for questions. We are making great progress, and I keep trying to comfort myself with the trajectory benchmarks. We have a long way to go, and we recognize that. We recognize that there are barriers, and we're trying to be more and more open to understand these and to have open, honest conversations about them and trying to address them. But I am so excited about the progress we've made in such a short time. So I will listen for questions and address them as such.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Warren.
Yes, ma'am.
So questions and comments from the board. Ms. Zook, I see your microphone down. I don't know if you'd like to get us
I
started this morning.
I probably didn't put it up after the last one. I think as I was listening to the presentation about the PD for principals to become turnaround principals, it seemed like a whole lot. And I remember in other times we have heard Dr. Weil mention that sometimes we're doing too many things and not giving the things we're doing an opportunity to gel and move from knowledge and understanding to the actual application of an ability to analyze wherein lies the problem. Have you had any feedback from your principals as far as they're feeling overwhelmed? What kind of feedback are you getting from your principals? Let me not put words in your mouth, sorry.
Yes, ma'am. We're in a complete agreement. As a matter of fact, there were a variety of other things that may have even been recommended that we actually decided not to do because it's a lot. And yes, I've had individual conversations as well as opened the opportunity for principals to share. Of course, they share a whole lot more when you're one-on-one, and they've said just that. It's a lot. It's a lot. And so the second thing I mentioned to Dr. Wild, I commented that we talked about data analysis for instructional impact, but the next thing was maximizing instructional time. And that is of the teachers, of course, but also of the instructional leaders. So we know that that is something that we have got to work more on. We called ourselves trying to provide the support for our new comprehensive curriculum system. And when Ms. Dockett Wilson talked about those 5 days in that instructional piece, those are at intermittent times throughout the year to provide some support, and you plan some and then come back to revisit. So that's kind of one piece supporting that. And then we focused on the evaluation system. So there are smaller pieces, but those are our two really big pieces. And we literally looked to do a lot more, but decided we can't do all that. So yes, ma'am, they've shared that it's a lot and it's overwhelming, and we tried to listen, but there were some key things that we really did have to hone in on, specifically with evaluation, that support and that feedback, and then the support, of course, for the new system we put in place.
Okay, and then I think on the part about the steps taken to identify highly effective teachers, excuse me, and retain them, is there a common template or language that is used with the teacher? Do they know if you're coming in to watch their explanation, to watch the things you're doing to help motivate? Do maybe their questioning techniques so they know if the children are getting it, if their activities match their objective? Do they have a common template with that, or is it anyway?
They've also been trained in tests, and they know what those frameworks are. We do the domains, I should say. we do need to maybe hone in the conversation. Sometimes we'll tend to share about pieces, and I'll move for Dr. Brown here in a moment, but sometimes we do tend to share about pieces that need some opportunities, I'll say. Sometimes we'll kind of focus more on that, but there are some big pieces that we do specifically talk about and consistently talk about, especially tied back to our instrument that probably Dr. Brown will speak on a little bit here.
In addition, recognizing that many of your teachers coming in, your new teachers, and especially your non-traditional teachers, have not seen what effective teaching look like, we do have our instructional facilitators model in the classroom, and on even without requesting, and recognizing that some of the teachers struggle in that area. The instructional facilitators do go into the classroom, do classroom modeling and the teaching. And with the new Ed Reflect / Bloom board, their resource line now is one that actually, if I'm having an issue with lesson delivery, classroom management, writing objective, there is a video for almost any area that you think you may have an issue with.
Okay, and then the final thing, or maybe some tips. I know one of the things that is often effective is, if you have the capability, is taping a lesson and letting an instructor actually see themselves. And because what's going on in their head and trying to manage your classroom and everything at the same time, you may not see what the observer is seeing. And secondly, I know Springdale has, and perhaps other districts as well, have lessons that you can access online and free for all of the standards that are being taught, so that teachers don't have to spend a lot of time reinventing the wheel, or if it's a novice teacher, this is an idea. And often those lessons may not be taught exactly the way it's explained there, but it'll spring an idea into your mind about, oh, I could do this, you know, the excitement that comes from the aha moment. So if you will, if you haven't already shared that, you might share that with them.
Thank you. And we do have with Dr. Gathright, we're learning that with the new Ed Reflect, teachers do have the option of recording themselves, and it does not count against their evaluation. We are currently looking at, and they should arrive, should be there this week, hopefully they come today, the Shribbles. That those are the pieces where you hang the lariat on your neck and it follows you wherever you go, so you can get a chance to look at yourself teach. And that's what we're doing now, looking at those. The big challenge with many of our teachers is recognizing the pedagogy of the educational process itself, of the learning, not knowing that it may be easy for me to teach this over here, but this has to come first. Right. So a lot of that is self-learning in the classroom, that if you're coming from a non-traditional stance, that has not been taught. So you're having to go back and learn those pieces, and you have to kind of as you go.
Yeah, task analysis is very often a missing link and all of that. Right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Ms. Dean, or Dr. Wild, did you want to say a few words in response? Yes, please.
Just wanted to address one of my major soapbox is every time we have a beginning principal placed into a priority school, then there is a whole lot of background knowledge that they have to acquire. That is in addition to the deep knowledge of how to do school improvement. So we see that in a lot of our priority schools. So one of the reasons we don't see as much gain, we have to keep in mind, is we have turnover in principals just like we have turnover in staff. The other piece that Ms. Warren and I have talked about with that data analysis, if you take a look at their 45-day progress reports, and if we were all understanding that when the teacher survey score goes below 3, then you're teachers are beginning to report a feeling of not being supported. So that is part of that data analysis and why we have agreed we will do more intense collaboration and that we'll actually come and assist in the analysis of the data and assist them at a greater depth. That would conclude all my soapbox for today.
We'll hold you to that, Dr. Wild. No, thank you. Is it Ms. Newton first? Did she grab first? All right, Ms. Newton and then Ms. Dean. Thank you.
I just have a couple of questions, but first I want to thank y'all because I know y'all put a lot of work into that, and you did a very thorough job of presenting what's going on at Dollar Way. The first question has to do with the curriculum that you're implementing. I read in the report that the teachers were feeling challenged with the implementation of that curriculum. How is that going?
A lot happened very quickly, and so that really added to the challenge. We've slowed a few things down, and it has improved. Data access was a big piece, and we've spent a lot of time and had a lot of conversations and some sessions and pulled back and said, hey, where are we? What do you need? What have we missed here? And so that has really made a big difference. I can't say enough about our instructional facilitators. They bridge the gap so well. So it has improved a great deal, especially with the knowledge level and comfort of our instructional facilitators going up as well. So we filled some gaps to help the implementation go a lot better, and it has improved a great deal. Still some work to do, but a great deal.
When they were giving the presentation, they talked about a daily instructional guide for the teachers. Is that guide kind of laid out minute by minute as far as how a lesson would go?
Yes, ma'am. We may have presented an example for you. Yes, we do have some detailed guides that do just that, literally what types of activities, how long to be in this block, activity center, so on and so forth. Now, of course, we have some seasoned, phenomenal teachers and who don't need as much detailed support, but we all need guidance to be able to assess what we're doing and be consistent with what we're doing. To say we've implemented it with fidelity and to literally use the results and they be meaningful, we've got to do some similar things. So veterans, guide, and they can do all kind of things, but we have a lot of people in the classroom, as Dr. Bryant mentioned, who do not have that background, and they need a guide, literally. So, yes, ma'am, to the point of even minute to minute, yes.
And so I understand when you're presenting a particular standard that they go that minute by minute plan. So what do you do for those students that are not there? What are you doing for RTI? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Okay. We have identified students using the data, and then of course classroom teachers recommendations, but we literally have math and literacy interventions through Read and Math 180. We have a very strategic phonics piece to deal with our really, really low struggling readers, Systems 44. So we have some specific pull-out interventions for children that are scheduled into every day to address interventions and to deal with those children who are really beyond Tier 1. And then there are interventions in the classroom as well. Our instructional facilitators are really drilling in to the data on the student level and being prescriptive to say, hey guys, let's sit around and talk about this. When we talk about these common planning periods, we have them grade level, of course middle level, and then as we look at content level, at middle level, and then grade level, and that's something everybody's doing, but we're spending much more detailed and specific time in those PLCs talking about students and their data and what are we going to do next. A little slow getting out of the gate to do a great deal of that, but we got a good pace going now.
Your teachers bought into it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am. We do have, sometimes it feels to teachers that you're kind of saying, what you've been doing is just not good and you're not good at what you're doing. And we're trying to take trying to take an approach that takes the personalization out of it. This is not about you per se. It's about the work, and it's definitely about the children. But what do you see? And I know that's going to be a more rich conversation as we move forward with the department helping us with some of those conversations. But yeah, it can really feel like an attack. And then sometimes, given just the nature of things as it goes outside of the district, to inside. So trying to provide that support and trying to get them to feel supported, although we have to point out that we really have some challenges.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yes.
Very good. Last question, as a former leader of the Arkansas River Co-op, you
Oh,
understand
wow.
the great services that you can get through there, and you know how important collaboration is for teachers and principals, and that's a great way for us to grow. How are you taking advantage of the resources that are there, and how important do you think that is to your growth as a district?
Of course we are. Knowing what I know about the resources, when we talk about not being able to retain and have a hard time recruiting teachers, we have programs that still need teachers. And I say to you, from zero up, all the services that the cooperative provides, we actually buy into. By choice, but by necessity. We are required to provide special education support to children 3 to 5 years of age. We could not do that without our cooperative. So we are buying into the services. They have been a great support. Some of the professional development on be it the district or principal or school level, it's come from the cooperative. They've been very, very helpful. Specifically, our instructional facilitators feel comfortable just calling and saying, hey, will you come out and help with this, or will you do this? And they have been super, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what. Even to the point we literally had a major issue related to technology and connectivity. Pretty simple, but when you move an entire district, takes quite a bit of time to get it all plugged back in. They literally sent people to come and do some grunt work. So whatever we've needed, they have been really helpful, and I don't know what we'd do without them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Noon, for those questions. Yes, Ms. Dean.
It's actually along the vein that my question was, being that Stuttgart was here yesterday to ask permission to leave the Arkansas River Co-op. Looking at your report and hearing the things that you're saying, it sounds like you all are taking advantage of the services that they provide. It's just, I'm trying to get some more clarity on, I guess, what your perspective is and what Stuttgart's perspective is. Because from Stuttgart's perspective, there was not adequate participation. There was not collaboration between the districts. So I'd like to know your perspective on that.
Mm-hmm. So this is a dream come true that you'd ask me this. I was here yesterday, and I don't mind telling you, very kind of emotional about it. This is my house. This is my house. I've lived in Pine Bluff my entire life, and Stuttgart was home for me. I worked there for 8 years, and I lived there. And Miss Megan, I hadn't said it out loud, but she was one of my students. So, I know Stuttgart too, and a lot of things have changed in Stuttgart. I worked in the Pine Bluff School District as well. I've experienced a great deal of our cooperative as a teacher and as an administrator. Mr. Nathan Gills, I consider him to be a super professional. Very regimented, and he has been a positive supporter of ARESC from the time I got there. I was the director when he was there. And the thing I'll say, though, is that while I was the director, none of the discussion that has come up in the last few months came up. Now, I don't know if it was because they were being really sweet to me and being respectful to me or being whatever you would think, but that was not the discussion. And but of course, when I did get this opportunity, and it's been a great opportunity too, and I really appreciate Commissioner Kiefer thinking of me. When I got this opportunity to be here at Dollarway, immediately there was a shift. immediately. And I can tell you, I was not the glue holding the co-op together. There are just a lot of phenomenal people there. I just happened to be the leader at the time, and perhaps I did give some things, but so just a super place. Co-ops in general provide some supports that we can't even write down on paper, but I won't make this too long. So when it did come up, we actually, as a co-op board, talked about how we could support this. And I don't mind telling you, as a co-op director, I've made calls to a couple of superintendents to say, hey, you got a principal here that, there was something going on here that I really think, you need to be aware of, that with a couple of districts. And may not even be really the districts you would think. But there have been conversations, but you can't legislate people's professional behavior. However, as a co-op director, I did think it was important to share when there were major concerns or distractions from the learning. So I do think the cooperative can do more in that respect. And yes, when you are in a co-op like ours, you have the Department of Corrections. Aren't their needs different? Then you have some schools that are in academic distress, and then you have some schools that are, high flyers, but we're all high flyers in some respect. The thing I would have really wanted to happen yesterday that I think didn't, we are peers of the Stuttgart School District. We are peers of Pine Bluff. We are peers of all of the districts, and we all have something to offer. Just so happens, Sheridan and Whitehall have provided some phenomenal support to all of us through their Quest leadership pieces. They provided support in a great number of ways, but we have also provided support, and we do have challenges, and that is major, huge. How do you give a Stuttgart what they need when it may be different from what a Dalloway needs? And I don't mind telling you, there have been opportunities that Dalloway did not attend, because we literally have ADE units coming to our house. So we don't have to duplicate that training. So sometimes when you don't drill all the way down into it, you don't really see all the issues. I won't say that what he said was untrue, but I will say it's one perspective. And that cooperative is providing super support. When we were unable to do certain things ourselves, that cooperative was able to do it. And there was a time when Dalloway probably was providing most of its professional development literally on that site. I mean, we're literally, a district-wide PD was there at the co-op. So I hate that it feels and seems the way it does. And there are some things that definitely need to be addressed and dealt with, but as we find, we do have very different needs. But your other cooperatives have people who are late too. Your other cooperatives have people that don't always act like they should. We used to talk about that kind of stuff. It's unfortunate, but he's been a professional even through the conversations. I mean, that's hard, somebody trying to tell you what you need to do with your district. But as a board member, we were responsible to make a decision for that cooperative. So as it ties back to Dalloway, we need the cooperative, and the cooperative has provided good support to all of the districts in its care.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. No, thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Yes, Ms. Abels.
Getting feedback right after an observation is crucial for teachers. So I'm just wondering, with your many number of eyes going into these rooms, and me being in that position, knowing people coming in to watch me, how are you giving those teachers the good and the ways to improve? How soon are they getting that information? And then are they able to then ask for additional help with their struggles?
I'd like Dr. Bryan to come and speak some to this, and you'll know Dr. Bryan too, Ms. Megan. Mrs. Abels, I'm sorry. But sometimes they may be getting a little too much feedback, because we do have a lot of eyes on them, and they're getting feedback in the system, with your pre and your post. But instructional facilitators are providing a lot of support as well and giving direct feedback. Also, that's a lot more comfortable than from administrator to teacher, and sharing with them in ways that I think is more on their level and they feel more comfortable asking questions of. But I'll give him the mic to elaborate more on that.
Thank you. They're given that feedback that very same day. That's one of the requirements that we ask. And not only do they get that feedback, then we ask, would you like for us to come back to see whether or not that particular area has improved? And we also share that information with the instructional facilitators so they can also monitor and help. Sometimes it's something that very simple that they can fix right then. Other times it's an ongoing problem that we have to monitor.
I wanted to share this idea because I think building your teacher morale with all of these things going on in your building. One school that a principal, he does observations like you're talking about, and at the end of the day, he sends out an email to the entire staff that says, here's what I saw today, and he lists all the positive. In so-and-so's room, this was happening, it was great. In so-and-so's room, just to kind of build that team and that positive, and it not just being around, here are the things we have to fix, but here are the things y'all are doing really well. So I would just maybe y'all consider that extra positive piece alongside that too.
We actually leave the positive comment with the teacher ourselves before they leave. Things like, we really enjoyed what you had posted on your wall outside, and or we really love the way you related to your students, or you are phenomenal with technology. Things like that we give teachers directly before we leave the building.
I was just curious about your ninth grade algebra, the numbers of D's and F's in that area, and I didn't know if y'all have a math coach that's helping with that, and I know those numbers did not change a lot from quarter one to quarter two, and I didn't know what y'all were doing for that.
We do have math coach that's working directly with, as you look at the 45-day plan that highlighted that particular area.
Yes.
Many of those D's and F are results of absenteeism.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Abels. Any additional questions or comments from the board? All right. Otherwise, Ms. Warren, to your team, to Dr. Wild, to all of you, thank you all so much for your time this morning, but more importantly, for all the work, obviously, that you all are putting in, and for just offering us this additional indulgence of being able to ask those questions, engage with you all and your team, but also hopefully here to be a support and to connect the dots, and especially appreciate your comments at the end to us, and it's just helpful to have as many perspectives as possible as we go in and try and offer support during the situations. But there is no doubt that the commitment and passion is there. And so we greatly appreciate that. With that, we do have another report as related to Dollar Way. And I think this was as partly a rise of public comment that's come before us in regards to the Rural Community Alliance and just really understanding how all of the dots are connecting. I think even yesterday, we were in all of our congratulatory remarks to districts coming off academic distress, we were remiss in noting even these external providers and different groups and nonprofits that are playing such a critical role in supporting communities. We laud the department, we laud the districts, but we all know that there's a greater level of partnership here, and sometimes that includes some of these other groups, and this is just one of those. That's that specific case. That said, we have been here in meeting for a minute, so I was going to take just a brief break if everybody, and then there was a public comment as well, but that's where my thought was, if we could take just a brief break, and then because this way we're not rushing, neither the report or the public comment was my main concern. And so with the indulgence, sorry to get folks to stand up there, but if we could reconvene at 10:20, and then we will resume with public comment to this item as well as to the Rural Community Alliance report. Thank you all. Yes, most definitely, yeah, I saw it. I was just, so it's not just, I guess, both her and the other one, because the combination of the two last 30 or so. Yeah, no, definitely, no, I did see that, and just wanted the opportunity, and actually, I'm going to ask. still several individuals lined up to speak, and we have a hard finish today as a board at noon. So want to be cognizant and respectful of everyone's time, and especially of the school districts, so that folks can get back in. And a little louder this time. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Thank you to my colleagues as we sit down again. Just as a point of order to let you know, the public comment that was to be taking place in regards to report item number 2, I've spoken with that specific individual, and we've actually decided to defer that until after the Community Alliance report, so that that individual, if the board so chooses to receive public comment, would have the opportunity to respond to both. So with that, we will moving on to reporting item number 3 from the Community Rural Alliance.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Candace Williams with Rural Community Alliance. So thank you all for having me today to present to you all. I know you probably have heard some things about what we're trying to do in Dalloway and 2 other communities that we work with. So just to get started, Rural Community Alliance started in 2003 after Act 60 came about. Started working with rural patrons and teachers, students around that, and initially the number was at 1,000, and we got the number down to 350, well, with advocacy from other members. So we got some leeway with that Act 60 bill in the 2015 legislative session when the waiver was passed, and I think you all have granted a waiver to a school district. Here's 3 with Forward. Our board president, Lavina Grandin, she was on the steering committee of Forward. She helped craft, she was part of that steering committee, helped craft the Forward plan. From that, we were able to engage rural members, and we were part of those focus groups of the 550 individuals that were counted in those focus groups. We were able to go down to our communities that we serve and get their voice, to craft the Forward plan. After the plan was released, we wanted to support 3 communities with creating a plan around some of the Forward focus areas that the community felt would best serve their respective communities. This led to a partnership with Community Resource Innovations. Jerry Derlikowski, a partner of that business. She's in the back, and you'll hear from her later on. There was a manual created for what we wanted to do with the Forward plan in the Forward community schools. There was a training held in late September. Our staff was there. Some of ADE attended as well. And each staff member, out of the 3 communities, we selected 3 local leaders. The local staff, RCA staff members were responsible for selecting those local leaders. So all of them attended a training at the end of September. And after that, we launched a project in those 3 communities, Dermont, Mariana, and Dalloway. Out of those 3, Mariana is the only one recognized by Forward as an official Forward community, but we've been working closely with Forward Arkansas throughout this whole process, and they support what we're doing. Like I said, each location had a manual. Our local RCA staff person that worked with the Dalloway project, she wanted to take a different route from using that manual. So that in turn caused a significant pause in the process. That staff member resigned at the beginning of January of this year. So from there, we were able to recruit an alumni from Dalloway to assist with the project moving forward. He's the president of the Booster Club down there. He's very involved with the community now. So we now have a meeting planned for February the 25th at the middle school. You are invited. It'll be from 9 to 1, and it will be us relaunching this effort in Dalloway. The other 2 communities that I mentioned, they are full speed ahead. They've been rolling through the process. They have monthly meetings. I know there have been some, you all probably have heard some concern around us stopping this in May. This does not end in May. We will not just stop any of this work in May. It is tied to a grant from the King Foundation that was over a 9-month period, but we will not stop this work in May. Nothing will stop, especially with us just relaunching this in Dalloway. There's no way we would just pull out now. So I'll take any questions from you all. That concludes my statement. I just wanted to give you all an update from our end of it. I know you probably have heard or seen some things, but I really wanted to, give you an update from Rural Community Alliance. So.
Thank you so much, Ms. Williams. We appreciate that. Yes, Ms. Zook.
So what are you doing?
What are we doing? We're helping these 3 communities come up with a plan around the Ford, Arkansas focus areas. There are 7 focus areas in Ford, Arkansas. Each community chooses which focus area they would like to tackle in their community, and they make a strategic plan around it. That's the end goal.
Okay, and how do you get the nonprofits, the faith-based, the parents, how do you get involvement from the community?
Now, as I stated before, the RCA staff person that was there, that was a part of her duty.
Well, tell me about the other communities then.
The other communities, we have a local RCA staff person, and we have a local community member that's working along with the staff member. They recruit the community. They do the outreach. They do all of that. It's not us coming in and putting any plan or any idea on them. It's definitely from the ground up type of approach. Does that answer your question? No?
No, but that's okay.
Okay.
Any other folks that would like to offer comment or questions for the Rural Community Alliance? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Williams. We appreciate your time, and there will be an opportunity here because it will be tied to this agenda item. But we do have a request for public comment here, and in which case some questions may be poised. And just know that if that is the case, you all would have the opportunity as well to respond.
Thank you.
So with that, I look now to the discretion of the board. We do need a majority vote to receive public comment this afternoon, and there have been indications of public comment for at least 2 of our agenda items. So with that. What is the will of the board? Okay. Motion made by Dr. Barth, seconded by Ms. Chambers. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Annie Bryant, you are recognized to offer public comments.
3 minutes.
No, that's only if it's not related to the agenda item.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you again for allowing me to make public comment this morning. I think first I'd like to clarify something. When I come before you, I don't mean to be confrontational. When I speak, I truly am seeking clarity myself. Okay, I have questions, and I'm seeking to improve academic achievement in Dalloway, and ultimately in Arkansas itself, if I can, in communities like ours. After speaking with Ms. Warren in December, I truly have reset my views, and I am more positive, but I'm also a realist. Okay. In my community, in my world, I realize that it is very difficult for good people to share information sometimes. Okay. It can be difficult because it's difficult to be transparent and share all of things that may not be good in other people's eyes. Because we want to look good. We want to for others to see the things that we're doing as always being positive. But sometimes sharing the bad is a good thing too. Because in order for us to show growth, in order for us to get better at what we're doing, sometimes we have to admit that some things are not going quite as well as we would hope them to be. Now, I know that I believe that Ms. Warren and some of the people that she works with hearts are in the right place. But it is not, it can be empowering when you are open and honest, because that gives you a place to start with. And then we can move forward, and it's empowering not only to you, but also to parents and others in the communities that you're working with. Because if we know where we are and we know where our children are, then we can help you move our children along. And I think that's why the data analysis being as clear as possible is really, really important. And also, I think that it's very important that engaging us and working with us and including us in things is very, very important. My concerns that I had about the lack of progress with the Community Schools Initiative and Forward Arkansas basically stems around the lack of progress that we had within our community, the community of Dalloway. And it's not about blame or anything like that, but from my perspective, what I see is like a pattern of in communities that are kind of like easy fix. You can go in there, you can kind of provide them with the information or whatever, and they can grab it and run with it. You get really good results. You know, they take it, they run with it. But in those communities where it's a little tougher because we lack knowledge, our parents are not as quick to grab on, those communities are more difficult to work with, and you don't see the results. But we're the neediest communities. We're the ones that really need Ford to be in there and to be working with us. And what I'm asking is that maybe they need someone to come in, maybe they need some facilitators, or they need some changes in their processes to teach them how to work with us, because we need them and we need that help. And we need those patterns to change. And we don't want them to go away, but we need the processes to change so that these things don't continue to happen, because we want them and we need them. And so what I'm asking is for help. I don't want you to go away. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just asking for more help. When you're looking at these things, look at the impacts that it's having on us as parents, on our children, and just check and see what can be done to help us help ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Bryant. I do want to give an opportunity from anyone from the district or RCA if they did want to respond. Obviously, we try and use these opportunities to build awareness and build bridges, and so would hate to not offer that since there were strategic invitations made around this morning to be able to hopefully build those bridges. So yes, Ms. Williams.
I'd like to allow Jerry Delakowski
Of course.
to speak first, and
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Williams. Ms. Delakowski.
Good morning. I'm Jerry Derlikowski with Community Resource Innovations. I'm working through a small contract with Rural Community Alliance in 3 different communities in Lee County, Dermott, and Dollarway. I am not responsible for being the community organizer, so I've kind of observed that process from a distance, and I thought a little perspective might be helpful for me. I don't know these communities, I don't know these folks, and that's why I'm not doing the community organizing. They have local people that they are identifying, and Rural Community Alliance, part of their mission is to help build capacity in these local leaders. And the idea Lavina and others proposed in coordination with Forward Arkansas was to develop community schools in these areas. And as I've found, there's some confusion about what a community school is. It's not like a charter school. It doesn't affect the administration of the district or the school. It's purely a partnership between whatever administration is in place with community leaders and programs, and usually there's one nonprofit that's organizing those thoughts. So as has been reported, the effort in Lee County in using the process Rural Community Alliance identified, and in fact, Lavina had reviewed that with the Forward personnel, Susan Harriman, and they all have signed off on it and agreed that that process was good. It's working in a couple of places, but when you're in as diverse a state as Arkansas is, you'll hit some snags in one community or other. We've had great cooperation from Superintendent Warren, and she's got so many irons in the fire. I really appreciate the effort she's putting forth. She's joined us for a meeting or two. There is a Facebook page they've been posting notices on, but I know in some of these communities, some patrons may not have broadband access even. So the idea was to build a stakeholder group that would have some leaders from different groups within the community. People are already working in Dollarway in different areas and in Pine Bluff at large that we want to bring in to help identify services and that can help connect those services to the people in Dollarway. And we've also been hoping to get better public participation from parents. One of the ways RCA did this was to contract with UAPB to do a survey. They went door knocking, door to door to door, and they got about one Saturday students went out and did this, and there was a small stipend to the students for that. It was not equal to their time, but it was a thank you. That survey got about 80 responses in Dollarway. They actually went across the river to some of the areas, and that river is a barrier in the Dollarway community for the school district. But they went all over, and as you can imagine, on a Saturday morning, that's a pretty good response rate, because there was a lot of people either not home, or there were a lot more doors knocked than that, but a lot of people not home or didn't want to talk to anybody Saturday morning. So that effort was made. We had a meeting to share those results, and we just had a couple of folks attend. Attendance has been a problem there. It hasn't been in our other two, so we keep trying to reinvent a little bit sometimes to find what's going to work there. I appreciate, Miss Bryant, I think, has been frustrated maybe with the progress, but I think anybody that's been around, I've been around a while, and Dollarway didn't get this way overnight, and we're not going to fix it in 9 months with a $20,000 grant. But we want to get a start. We want to get a foothold. We want to get the community to connect and agree to work together to provide some services. Now, Ms. Warren and all these people that are doing so much work, all of that's for naught if their kids show up hungry, or that they haven't had any sleep all night because they've been out in the car with their mom or something, or all of the kinds of challenges that too many in their community have. They can't address all of those things by fixing PD, doing professional development and that thing. They need the community to unite and provide some resources to their children, and that's what we're trying to facilitate. It's a work in progress. We've got great people, and I think people with good intent, but that maybe haven't quite seen all of the vision yet. So, but I appreciate the work they're doing, and Rural Community Alliance has really really investing in this. And Candace, do you want to sum up?
Just again, thank you all. And throughout this process, I've tried to be as accessible as I can be to communities. Ms. Bryan has called me at 7:59 p.m. at night, and I've answered the phone for her. She knows where my office is, so if there's ever an issue of needing to contact me or coming by the office or anything, I'm there, I'm open, I'm available. And not just with the Dollarway, but with the other 2 locations as well. I really want this to come into fruition, for the end goal to really, be there for each one of these communities. But we have had a little sidetracking, with Dollarway, but I foresee it really happening and us getting to that end goal. So thank you all. And thanks Superintendent Warren for being willing and open to work with us.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. And with, I guess these two comments has inspired some comments from our board, and so we'll start off with Ms. Abels.
I just had a question as to how many team members are coming to y'all's events in Dollarway? Like, how many community members are participating?
I've been at all but one of the meetings, and when my father passed away, I wasn't there. But we've only had 2 or 3 folks. We had 5 folks one night when the library tax, they were interested in talking to the group for the library tax. There were several folks showed up, but it's been like pulling teeth to get folks to come out. I think we need to improve our communication, like I say, the Facebook page and some of the calls. We've had preachers make calls to some of their churches, different things we're experimenting with. We've had more consistent. One of the problems is when people come, they don't come the next month, and then we have a new group. So we were constantly starting over. We'd reach out, and 2 or 3 more people would come to, and it's hard to build some momentum and progress like that. That has not been the case in the other 2 communities. We've had 30 plus in Lee County each time. In a small town, that's a lot to come at night to a meeting. Dr. Kenneth Jones has been going with us to those meetings, and I think he's been pretty pleased with the progress in Lee County. And Dermott's a lot smaller than the Lee County district. It's 374 kids. It's on the borderline to concerns about consolidation, but they've had a good turnout, and our building, that turnout, they seem to, each time a few people bring a few more people. Now, you'll always have a couple of folks drop out, but.
Do you feel like this new leader is going to make a difference in changing those numbers?
I
And
think,
is that the problem?
I think so, because Mr. Lockett was a Dollarway grad, and he's very much more connected in the community with different groups. I don't know if any of you know Bruce Lockett. I think some of you may have. He actually teaches as a substitute teacher at the school, and he's like, they mentioned the pep squad, the booster club, and he's just so active and reaches so many people in other avenues of his professional career that I think he can connect with those folks and build some interest. That's what we're hoping. It's a very low budget. We don't have expensive consultants coming in to work in these areas. We've got a local leader and their helper, Stephen Bronskill, he's a TFA person that has done some work in that area, and he's stayed in that community and is trying to build some support in all of Pine Bluff. And I believe he's working for the mayor's office now in Pine Bluff. So it took me a long time, and y'all may not know, Dollarway is not a community, it's a subset of Pine Bluff, and that's me being here in Little Rock. I didn't realize that. I thought there would be a mayor of Dollarway, but there's not. So I think trying to get people in the Pine Bluff community have been rightfully so focusing on Pine Bluff and Pine Bluff High School and the progress they're making, and Watson Chapel also, and so as I say, that's why I'm not doing the community organizing. But
I just have one more question. Are any of the student groups helping to bring parents and community members into this? I know like at our school, some of our student clubs help, coordinate community things.
As I stated earlier, we're just now getting the relaunch. Outreach was definitely an issue. Outreach was in the hands of our former staff member and Stephen. Our former staff member was from that area, so I totally depended on her, really being the outreach, Mrs. Zook. And that just didn't roll out like that. I have become more involved with it now. Just met with Superintendent Warren yesterday with Stephen and Bruce. We'll have flyers going out today, Superintendent Warren, to all of the students in the district. So we're really hitting the ground hard now, trying to get people there to that meeting on February 25th.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Abels. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Yes. Oh, sorry, Ms. Newman, apologies.
One quick comment. One thing that you might, excuse me, might try is instead of having them come to you, find community meetings that are already going on, church services, something that's going on after church or whatever.
Mhm.
So instead of them coming to you, you go to them.
Yes.
Go to their existing meetings and maybe build interest that way, and then try to pull them in afterwards.
Thank you.
Might try that, see if that would work.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. And I think, as everyone has alluded here, this is a process. I know it's something, as well as a community organizer myself, under different circumstances, but as related to immigrants and immigration. And it's not something in terms of turnout, interest, commitment, involvement that always happens overnight. But I think we've experienced with Ms. Bryant, obviously a very passionate advocate on the part of the students and parents and families there. We hope that that's somebody that you all may be connecting and able to connect to. And then with that, I think at the end of the day, and our intentions with all of this here is a tied to communication. It's so hard in education where so many moving pieces and so many people involved, for everybody to always say that they feel like they understand what's going on, who's doing what are the opportunities out there, and we realize where communication should be the easiest thing. Many times it's the one we overlook the most, or that there's never enough time to do in a given day, just because not everybody communicates the same way. And especially our communities here. It's not like you can just send one Facebook post out there, although that is one way, but there's some people that still, nothing will replace as a personal phone call or a personal visit, or a text message. And so you just always have to be building in time to reaching out and talking to all the different folks. What I hope we, if anything here, have highlighted is the opportunity to maybe, at least on some of these specific areas, prioritize some communication so that everybody can work together around these shared opportunities that are out there. But whenever we can be helpful, as well as a state board, in connecting dots or bridges, I think that really was what our intention was today. Hearing different pieces, but knowing truth doesn't ever belong just to one side, and that we have an opportunity here to hopefully bring folks together in a way that lets us do some collective learning together. Because at the end of the day, one thing I don't think any of us doubts is all of your commitment to Dollarway. I think that's clear along all sides. So it's just, how do we find ways to work together and communicate in maybe a stronger way that lends to that. So thank you all for participating. Thank you for your time today. Best of luck getting back to Dollarway, everyone. And thank you as well, Ms. Bryant, for always accompanying these processes. I wish every parent in Arkansas followed everything, not just the state board, the legislature, everyone does. And so we appreciate that. I don't think there's a stronger model I've seen for citizenship in Arkansas than Ms. Bryant. And I just also wanted to, as a community organizer, personally thank you for that. If I could multiply you times 1,000,000, I think Arkansas would look much, much different. So thank you for that. Moving on now to our final progress report then, in regards to academic distress. Coming before us today is the Little Rock School District. Dr. Wild, if you'll proceed, and obviously everyone from Dollarway will respectfully note as you all may transition out this morning. So Dr. Wild, you are recognized.
Okay. Richard Wild, School Improvement Unit. The same process for Little Rock that we did for Dollarway. The 3 questions, again, related to how are we developing the principals, how are we identifying and attempting to retain teachers, and then the 3rd question related to the curriculum and how are we verifying that the written curriculum is the taught curriculum. They have submitted a number of documents into your packet, and Mr. Poor and his team is here.
Madam Chair and members of the board, we appreciate the time and opportunity to present to you today, and I think a PowerPoint will be coming up here in just a second for you to view. We know that we've submitted a variety of different documents to you, and I do have a team here that will help both of the the deputy and associate superintendent that can help discussions related to principal if we need it. Have our head of HR, Ms. Rhonda Benton, who's here to talk about what we're trying to do to attract and retain staff. And then Dr. Perkins, who's here for support on the curriculum, as well as Mr. Glasgow, who is also here to support us. So, when you look at things in terms of the challenges, and this is a slide that actually you as a board saw before when I came in front of you previously, of just sharing some things. And, the good thing is that we're ticking down on the number of schools that are under distress from 6. Baseline was the first to go off. It's interesting that many times people think that baseline came off because it was reconfigured, but it actually came off because of test scores. And the positive thing is, looking at the test scores, it looks like baselines even improved more as we continue to work with them over this past year, last 2 years really, as it's been kind of reconstituted. We have 2 schools that came off yesterday as a part of your decision, and it was fun to watch the principals get interviewed last night as a part of the celebration, and we enjoyed being here yesterday with you to go through that particular vote. Obviously, we still have other schools beyond the distressed schools, and when you look at it, we have 3 schools that are left, Hall High School, Cloverdale Middle School, and Henderson Middle School, that we have to continue to move forward on so that we can move back to get local control. Local control, though, when we celebrated with McClellan and Fair, we talked about it as a pre-K-12 celebration, because every one of those people matter in terms of the students that move through the pipeline. That also means that we have a pre-K-12 deliverable and efforts that have to come forward to help out with the 3 remaining schools that are still on distress. Other challenges, and I'm not going to go into a ton of depth on this, but just to refresh, we do have capital needs at multiple facilities. Read an interesting article that kind of fell in my lap the first of this week as we went and presented to all the leaders in the Southwest POA groups. It said that academic performance can actually be enhanced by as much as 11%. Now, that's the highest number I've ever saw, and I think it's more realistic to say 3 to 5% in terms of improving your academic environments so that it's more conducive to learning. And we have capital needs that will exceed over $300 million in this district. That was outlined in the Fannie Howey study in 2014. So we still have to address that need to improve facilities. I want to continue with trying to provide wraparound services and support to our sites that need that. Our middle school enrollment challenge, that's where we lose more students. It's interesting that charter schools and private schools are actually diving even lower at grade levels to try to recruit our students into 3rd and 4th grade. And so what we're trying to do to re-image some of our middle schools, and remember what we talked about before is really trying to bring in project-based learning environments. And I've had really interesting conversations with the Rockefeller Group, Ford, Arkansas, about how they might assist us, as well as Noble Impact. And our middle school principals have done a great job of everything from trying to recruit and be more visible in the elementary levels to also establishing partners with to go forward on project-based learning. We have issues with in our system in terms of antiquated business systems. I tried to make you aware before that some of those things that are included are our phone systems, which we said we were going to get fixed by December. We did, in fact, get that done. So all of the sites now are up and running in terms of new phone systems. Many of you are aware that Little Rock School District never moved forward with the rest of the state on eSchool. We're the last school district to move forward on eSchool. That training and effort to create the transition is in process right now, as well as moving forward on e-finance, and so we're doing that in conjunction with the department. We also, I think, might have been the first district to actually host Dr. Saunders this week on bringing in My School so that our staff can understand the power of that tool that you have available, and we will now be pushing that down to our principals. Mr. Burton kept bugging me during as the rest of the meeting was going on, look, let me show you this. And so we're diving into that tool, and we appreciate what the department's done to provide that. Right. One last tech tool that's coming into the district that has not been in Little Rock before is the whole tool to use for evaluations with our staff. So as we move towards tests and leads, because Little Rock, again, did not move forward with the rest of the state, we're moving forward on that this next year. And the Bloomboard tool and I know you're well-versed on this, there's so many different positive things in terms of interactions that can occur between supervisors and teachers to understand what professional development needs are and what ways we can improve and grow. Of course, the two other things that are on here for challenges that I presented before is that we are losing desegregation funds, $37 million, that next year will be designated for capital needs, and then after that, those funds go away. And then we continue to try to work on perception, public perception, each and every day within the district. We've had a lot of positive news just in the last week, whether it's Twitter town hall with our kids, to talking about violence and improving culture, to work on new career fields, to the distressed schools coming off. And then finally, we also had this week our ALE program at Hamilton get recognized by the state. So we have had a lot of positive things that I think are happening in the district. Some challenges, and thinking now about moving forward specifically about supporting our principals. This first slide, to be honest with you, this is a deliverable that should be for every school, every district. It doesn't matter whether you're challenged or distressed. This is what is just good practice. And so what we have been doing, we have really not targeted, just to be fair, in a real specific, granular way. Most of our efforts have been trying to, blanket best practice for our entire district. What you're going to see on the next slide is what we're trying to transition to into some real specificity towards our principals that are at the targeted sites. I will share that we are working with the Arkansas Leadership Academy. We met with them just in the last 2 weeks to try to target a professional development for all of our assistant principal level group on up to help us in terms of creating better practices and approaches in terms of our work as leaders. And you can see these are all things, I'm not going to read to you, that again, good districts do. And certainly we're trying to do all these things, and we're trying to make sure that we trust and verify each one of those areas. Next steps for us, though, in terms of working with our principals, is that we are, and I believe this is a suggestion that did come from our colleagues at ADE, along with our own folks, of doing an assessment with our leaders. And really, when you think about targeted professional development, one size does not fit all. Each of these principals come in with different strengths, and they also have different things that they need to have support with. Each principal also has a unique set of circumstances in terms of their staff as well as their students. And so the blanket approach has to be modified, but it has to be based on first understanding where the principals are and then trying to match that up and then providing very specific professional development for those individuals. Some of that has actually already begun this year with our Achieve team. Best example of that is Frank Williams from Henderson. He called out, and I think he did it, if you remember, with a little toy in front, and said, one of the things that I need to do as a principal is become better at data management. I want to understand that. Well, we responded to that with a very specific action under the Achieve team, with Dr. Perkins being a person that, worked with him hand in hand, one-on-one, to kind of try to move that forward. We gave data last night at our CAB, Community Advisory Board meeting on Henderson, that they've shown really great growth. And so some of the work that's going on this specific support to principals, I think, is making a difference. We also want to focus our PD efforts on the principal role in terms of what is it that a principal and assistant principals, and I would really emphasize the assistant principals, that we've got additional work on, because a lot of times our assistant principals kind of have a framework in their head of being a part of the school culture and handling discipline issues, and we need to move them into having a stronger role as being instructional leaders. And what are the specific things that are best practices for those folks to deploy as a part of being in a professional learning community, as well as living in a system that is response to intervention and RTI structure. So those are things that we are going to be working on over the summer with our principals. We also are going to work with our principals to support teachers with student engagement strategies over and over and over in every one of our Achieve team meetings with the schools that are currently tagged as being distressed or were tagged as being in distress. They were saying that the challenge that the principal has and their staff is that when you go to into a classroom, first off, there's different levels and abilities of our teachers. The second thing is the different levels of abilities of the students can really be almost 6 grade levels within a classroom. You might have several students that are above grade level in terms of their performance ability, some right on, and then you have a large number of students that are below grade level. And the challenge then of delivering instruction, great example that I can give, again, specifically at Henderson, and I know our Teacher of the Year has been able out and saw some of this transformation. But at Henderson, the first time that Dr. Whitehorn and I went into one of the classrooms, we saw a science teacher. This guy, he was so passionate about teaching science. He loved science. And the kids that were in that class, and there was about 18 kids, there were about 4 that loved it right with him. There was about another 5 or 6 that were drifting in and out of the lesson. And then there was another 4 or 5, my math's probably not good right now, but 4 or 5 that were totally disengaged. The principal asked and called this out as a part of needs within his environment and what he wants to do to try to enhance that. And so we have I think this is a big, big task in front of us of trying to support the principals, obviously then go down to support the teachers in terms of enhancing student engagement strategies so that the kids are more involved in their learning, more active, it's not teacher-driven. And in some ways, it's almost flipping the classroom, not only so that technology gets infused more, but also so that some of the strategies that are used in elementary schools get used in our secondary environments. Creation of culture. You know, I think we're doing some really good things in that, and you've seen some of the personalities that we have in those schools right now, but we need to continue that work in terms of supporting our principals with creation of culture. And finally, the work with the department and school improvement specialists, our central office, to utilize the Achieve team. What we found so far with the Achieve team, it's been interesting to me that we are now have, I believe, had second meetings with all of our schools. And we said, okay, so it looks like we're probably in a good place. You can see there's energy, there's connections, things are happening. Do we want to wait now until sometime at the end of the school year? No. We want to have it again because they're liking that interaction with all of our folks of coming together and thinking out loud to say, here's what we've got to go do to get better. And so we will continue to work with all those parties. Next, again, it's just a slide that shows here's generic, if you will, but items that you'd say these are best practices that any district would employ if they can. And we're trying to do all these things to try to create an environment where teachers feel valued and teachers are being recruited. This particular area, though, when you look at it, again, it doesn't really tackle the distressed. And I know you as board members have heard that we've had such turnover with principals, turnover with teachers, and in some cases almost a third of the staff coming and going. So to take that to the next level, what we're going to do with the HR department is explore best practices for recruitment and retention and devise a plan to support those schools with the greatest need. Basically what that means is, Little Rock is a little bit different in terms of a distressed school compared to others in the state because we are an urban environment. We need to reach out into other areas of the country that also are urban environments and look and see what their best practices are, capture those things. I'm sure we're going to see some things that we are doing, but we're also, in my mind, going to learn some things that we aren't aware of that schools are doing or districts are doing to try to attract and retain. That task was going to be expected of our Human Resource Department, have it before the end of the year, and of course we can provide you information about that. New thing, I'd never heard of stay interviews until Ms. Benton brought that up. So that's her background coming from Children's Hospital. A stay interview is actually interviewing the people that are in your district, and really our target for this first year is to talk to anybody that got hired into one of these distressed schools. And we will include the Fair and McClellan group, but anyone that got hired in this past year, classified employee, teachers, or principals. And we want to go through a whole series of questions with them. What is it that attracted you to this? What were your other options? What did we do well to onboard you into the district? What would you have liked to have seen happen? Now, once the school year's gone on, what type of support has been there? What is going to help you stay with us? What would it take? What is the things that we need to do? We also will be conducting exit interviews of personnel as they leave those distressed schools, and to the best of my knowledge, those two actions have not previously happened in the district. The next item that we'll look at is trying to ensure that the written curriculum is being taught. Again, this list that I have in front of you is kind of like just things that you would expect every school district to do. That's just solid ways of dealing with the written curriculum. I think the key one on this one is that as we're moving forward, this is where you rely on real collaboration within multiple layers of the organization. And I think it's really incumbent upon all of us to figure out how to trust and verify that these things all are occurring. Dr. Gocher and I had a little bit of a conversation about this particular slide, and he says, well, Mike, this is what everybody should do. And I said, I agree. And then he said, trust but verify probably is the key. And I said, that's a really good way to frame this, that we still have additional work in this area. I think that there's ground that we can still move forward on. But specifically in terms of what else we can do, specifically at the distressed schools, is I think that we need to collect the samples of unit assessments. If we were to capture the assessments, what that does and I'm talking about what teachers are doing on informal assessment as well as what they're doing at the end of units, we need to get a better handle of that, because it allows us really to see with the rigor. It also allows us to see, what ways we're bringing out intervention. It also allows us to see what ways we're trying to maybe connect previous learnings taught and making sure that there's kind of always that time to kind of go backwards to make sure that the learning that happened maybe a month ago is still there. So we need to really evaluate how that's going. We also are looking at, and this fits into the previous comment, of utilization of instructional time with target to enhance student engagement. If a learner is engaged, we have a really good chance of having achievement move forward. But we also know that we need to provide support to staff. And we've used a variety of different tools and techniques to try to make that happen during the year at both the middle school and the high school, and that's been a big focus of the Achieve teams. The final thing on this particular one for summer work is structure of Tier 2 and Tier 3. To be real honest, and I'm a high school guy, and I've been talking RTI now for about 15 years. It's the biggest challenge to try to pull that off. We have the biggest challenges in timing. We have the biggest challenges in planning time between the colleagues. Bottom line, we got to do better at this area. And one of the reasons we've suggested to go to the block schedule for our schools next year across the board is we actually think this type of teaming approach and pullouts and targeted support can happen better in that environment with a Tier 2 and Tier 3 with block schedule. Two other things, utilization of the electronic classroom observation that I mentioned earlier of the Bloom board. We think that's going to give great feedback to teachers, so we're excited. But it'll also provide feedback to us at the district level of how we can provide professional development for our staff. Final, provide ongoing PD on differentiation, tiered intervention, reading, writing across content areas to meet individual needs. The ownership of being a good reader is not just in the English department. Science department, social studies, even our elective programs have to have ownership to say, but they also have to have strategies of how to deploy reading strategies within their content areas and writing strategies within their content areas because that's going to help. And then finally, critical thinking activities in all those different content areas also will help us within the math area. So we've got to feel like everybody's in, everybody's together in terms of those types of strategies. And so with that, I'm going to finish just with a couple things that I always have on our slide, that there's opportunities right now in terms of individual actions. I'm hopeful that as some people hear this presentation or that maybe paid attention to our Community Advisory Board meeting last night, that they jump in and say, hey, have you thought about this, or would you be interested in this type of support? We also know that collective action brings a tremendous amount of good. We've got a really good thing happening in terms of collective action within the district that I feel like is going on, but down into the teacher level, through the principals and on up into our central administration as well as with the department. But we continue to try to work on that, and we hope to move others that are going to jump in and help us as a district. So with that, we will stop. I'm going to actually have my team join me behind me now and around me so that we can address any of the questions that you might have either about our report or this specific presentation that we just finished.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Poor. Did anyone from your team want to make comments before we get into our comments and questions?
I would just, I would like, good morning, board. I would just like to say publicly.
If you could state your name for.
I'm sorry, Marvin Burton, Deputy Superintendent. I would just like to say publicly to thank the parents and the students and the teachers and administrators, past and present, that is attended and associated with J.E. Fair and McClellan. A lot of the hard work that was done by those students, and those students who started this progress, they will be graduating this particular year. So I just want to extend that thanks to those students, and not to discard the other students who worked in the other high schools and middle schools and so forth, but the recognition for those students who put in the hard work. And one of the students, when we had our Twitter town hall meeting, stated quite eloquently from McClellan, she said, "We're better than that, and we will prove it." And they did. So I just want to end with that particular statement.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Burden. I'll start off with just, I guess, a couple questions and then open it up to the questions from my colleagues here today. First and foremost, thank you, Mr. Poor, as always, and for your team for such a clear presentation, always full of a lot of things going on. And I'm grateful that there's members of the community here as well, because I think sometimes that's the question, what exactly are you doing? And where I'm grateful we have the opportunity to hear it. Obviously, the ones that need this most of all are the patrons of your own community. And so I appreciate this time and this space for that. And with that, obviously, we can't start today without, just as Dr. Burden said, acknowledging the success. We don't get often enough to have moments where we can celebrate successes, and doing so right and frequently is important. And so just once again, I know we gave a standing ovation yesterday, but obviously this is huge, and a moment, again, not just for the district or for this department, for the community itself, the parents, as you said, the students that took it upon themselves to show themselves and prove what they're capable of. And so that needs to be lauded. And thank you that we can start this today. As you all know, I did have the opportunity to participate with a commissioner, with members of patrons of your community, individuals with ongoing questions, as we have right now about the process, the decision that's come down yesterday in regards, I know, to the budget, something you all have long been waiting for in terms of moving forward, and just general processes together. And I walked away with two observations I know I shared with folks here in the department, and I think they may have passed on to you. And actually, this isn't too indifferent from the previous presentation with Dollarway around communication. Know that I couched these two questions with the statement that it's not necessarily sometimes what we specifically say. Sometimes it's actually maybe things we don't say or how we say it. But it's important for us to reflect on what people heard, right? We think we said something in the best way possible. Maybe we thought we created a space to do that, and we thought and again, everything that you all are doing, maybe we felt that communication was accomplished, but I definitely felt a disconnect in communication sitting in that meeting, and the two things that just really struck out to me was members of your community, one feeling like maybe you didn't believe in them, and parents and others, and I know you've given the case here of students and such, but there are members of your community who are saying we want to help and be part of this process, and just feeling maybe you don't or what has happened transpired that maybe you don't believe in them. And then the other thing I walked away with was definitely as related to these upcoming difficult budget decisions, and we know they're difficult. And the commissioner gave us a whole history around this. This isn't a unique moment you're in, either as a district or we are as a state. But patrons of your community not feeling convinced that the reason these schools are being closed is because of money, and not maybe feeling ownership enough of what's happening with the budget to feel that they feel that there is that justification that this is being motivated because of finances and decisions. So I share that as I shared with others. And again, this is, as a community organizer, something I always strive to do is try and hear what people are saying, right? And that's what I heard. Those were my two big talkaways from that meeting. So I offer that up to you and hope that you might be able to elucidate a little bit on both of those questions and concerns from your patrons.
Thank you very much. I think the first question of just believing in this community, I think that one of the things, and I believe I shared this last time, is that this is a community that has great passion about their children, and there's people that are ready to dive in and go support. And I found that in a variety of different ways in terms of how people have reacted to that, whether that's attending meetings. If you look at the meetings that occurred, the last two meetings that we had that were public meetings were specifically in those communities after my recommendation had been announced, which were not easy meetings at Franklin and at Wilson. The previous meetings were a whole set of meetings, 7 meetings that we went to each community, and we really had, I felt like, really good representation at those meetings. Sometimes as many as 200 people at those meetings where we were gathering feedback, and we captured all that feedback and looked at it, and we did amend our proposals. If you look at it, there's actually been 3 versions of how our budgets evolved over time as we tried to listen to the community. Now, I will tell you, when you're talking about a total of $41 million that was going to get reduced, and you look at already the amount of money that had been cut and where it got cut, this last $11 million it's tough. It's really tough. So it's important to remember that one of the things that happened is our employees took the previous reductions on their backs. They had less days on their contract, 5 less days or 2 less days. They had less money coming in terms of the contribution from the district on their health benefits. That ended up being $75 per month by the time it was all said and done that they got less in. Then you had reductions of jobs and positions throughout the district over this time. So now we're at a different phase, and then there's options and choices. And when you look at these options and choices on budgets, and if you go even look at my colleagues at what's going on in North Little Rock and Pulaski School District, or you look at other districts in terms of where things are in terms of budget reductions, the things of where you can go in terms of reducing, especially when you're a people-intensive business, and you're now down to that last stage, you are going to impact people. And now it's incumbent upon us to go work on the transition part of this. I want to still finish off with believing in people and my belief in them as a community. Whether it's in developing a Bright Futures program that is done in conjunction with the city and Goodwill. We had a wonderful kickoff for that. The career tech programs that we're working on. We're having people come to the table to, I think, jump in and support this district because they know the district's at a critical time and they want to see local control back. And so I personally can share that I believe in this community wholeheartedly and think that we are on the right track. I believe we're going to be a better district next year. Convinced about closure, and how does that fit into the budget? I kind of weave that in a little bit with the first part of this answer, but again, you have to kind of look at all of the cuts that have occurred up to this point, and then you also have to look at, I know that it's not easy to say we have to be a business model as well as an educational model, but if we don't handle our business correctly and we don't take care of things financially, we set ourselves up on track to have a fiscal distress issue. So the business aspect of this, when we have capacity of over 2,300 elementary seats, that's prior to we ever even looking at portables. There are over 4,000 student available seats at the elementary level when you count in portables. So we had to do some right sizing there. And if you think about this, one other thing about school closures, this isn't just something that Mike Poore dreamed of. There were discussions about school closure for several years, and the Civic Advisory Group subcommittee on facility, the people that were a part of that committee even they made recommendations inside that committee to say, here are the schools that we think. Now, You won't see that, I want to just make crystal clear, you won't see that on the bigger report, because the bigger report did not reflect that that was something that they wanted to do. They, in fact, said they wanted to stay away from it. But inside the subcommittee, there was that type of action as well. So, you know, this is one of those things that is extremely challenging, and the very thing that we strive to do of having children and parents love their schools, we disrupt that when we do something like this. And so now it's incumbent upon us of executing transition. And the transition, that's probably another factor, is that when you look at things over time, either in this district or elsewhere in the country, there's probably a lack of trust in how well we can execute the transition. But I'm telling you that our team will be up to that task, and we're ready to be held accountable to being successful with transition, so that we make students and staff feel very comfortable in their new sites, that we help our partners in terms of transitioning, hopefully into new locations, and that we are a better district as we go into next year.
Yes, Dr. Barth.
Thanks, and thank you for your presentation, and I have no doubt about your belief in this district and the students and of the district, and so that is clear. I do have, and they're somewhat disjointed, a couple of questions and then a couple of comments. First off, you know, I think your presentation in terms of the response to the three areas, first rate, right on. You and your team clearly know what you're doing in that regard. I will. One of my soapboxes is my concerns about the great care that has to be done with disciplinary learning. Disciplinary literacy. That we don't lose the disciplines that are part of that. And I have seen. I've been in classrooms which were quote-unquote social science classrooms, not in the district, but in other schools, which are quote-unquote social science classrooms, but really feel like reading classrooms. And I think that it really is important that we don't lose science, we don't lose social science, we don't lose all these other things that are part of a holistic education. So just always that caveat about, you know, disciplinary literacy being done right. I think it is a great strategy, but doesn't always work, as you, I think, know well. Second, I want to drill down into the three individual schools that we've got left that are in academic distress after yesterday. You've spoken to Henderson and what we are seeing in terms of significant growth there, and you know, I think while it is Henderson's not going to be exactly where we want Henderson to be, the trajectory is right on there. We do know that there is a future plan in Southwest Little Rock related to the Cloverdale Middle School. So that school obviously has challenges moving forward, but there is a plan there. The one school that I think is the one that is the most challenging, and I would argue the most crucial to get right, is Hall. And so I would ask for you to speak a little bit to the future of Hall for us.
I will, and I'm going to have Mr. Burton start on that in terms of his work with helping them with the innovation status, because that's something they're working on, and I want you to hear. There is a critical vote coming up with that staff to see whether they want to move forward on that particular possibility.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to speak on Hall. Hall, their team, a team of teachers, it was presented to them as an option as for a school of innovation. And they have attended, representatives from that staff, administration, and teachers have attended several opportunities on School of Innovation, even the conference that was hosted, around what should be the best fit as they move forward. They're thinking about expanding what they're already doing with their 9th grade academy as far as project-based learning type of approach, personalized student learning growth. That particular, in phasing it in, they've actually reviewed a number of the previous approved School of Innovation schools around the state to see what has been done within the state. Their SILT team, School Improvement Leadership Team, will working hand in hand with the innovation team to try to be very prescriptive on what they want to do. And the meetings have been very productive as far as involving the tribe, some of the tribe members, which are the alumni from Hall, on what the next steps will be. But the main thing they're focused on, not to just throw a project out there. They want to be very clear, even to the point of thinking maybe to delay it a year. in order to make sure that whatever they decide to do, that is something that will be effective and that will work well with the diversified population. Because Hall, unlike the other 5 high schools, Hall has a newcomer center. Hall has a very diverse special needs population. Hall has a very eclectic feeder pattern by way of the students that attend Hall. And I just want to be quite clear on that. So with those various challenges, what we do for Hall has to be very intentionally done with the diversity in that particular school. We must make sure that beyond just an innovation, even down to the instructional practices, that we're very clear and intentional about what we do with that population, even down to the training of the staff. And that's why I worked with Mr. Schlischer, the principal, when he knew that he was going to have a large turnover, which Hall staff, 1/3 of the teachers there are new to Hall. Hall has approximately 92 teachers, and he hired 30 this year. So with that, we actually started an onboarding program that was 5 days in the beginning of the summer. So those teachers were acclimated to Hall, and also the progress as far as what they wanted to do prescriptively for Hall, and understand what their roles would be for that particular school. So we've been very intentional. Mr. Schlischer's in his 2nd year at the Arkansas Leadership Academy, and he's working very hard in order to understand how to be a true turnaround principal. And 2 of his assistant principals are also part of the Assistant Principal Leadership Academy as well. The school improvement specialist, Ms. Roxy Browning, works hand in hand with the instructional teams. There are a number of things that are in place that will help Hall move forward. But digging deep, and Mr. Poore was right, I was bugging him during the previous presentation around from my school information, and if you dig deep into the actual data, it points out there's a true deficit in reading. And reading is very specific, and it's not only just a reading by way of the language barrier, but it's a reading for understanding on that level. And as I compare Hall, Fair, and McClellan, the reading level of the feeder patterns of students coming into Hall, it is significantly lower. And I'm not making excuses, I'm just saying that is the reality. So when you start much lower, it is much harder in order to accomplish that level of growth. Ms. Zook has brought that to our attention several times, how to truly analyze with the feeder patterns. So I'm going to tell you that those are challenges that are not going with just a blind eye. Those are realistic things that we have to really be very intentional around how we would move forward and address the needs of Hall. And that's why disciplinary literacy is a component. It is not a magic bullet, but we're training and we're working with our teachers on teaching literacy and also writing in the content area, so the students will understand in science that they understand the pedagogy in science, so they can become better fluent readers in that particular subject area. And those are just some of the things that we are prescriptively doing, at Hall High School.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I think in terms of something that is more fundamental in nature, in terms of change in that very important school, I agree. Different topic is, and this is back to Mr. Poore, in terms of the conversation that started yesterday, which is about the future of the schools that are being closed, and those campuses, and how important it is to quickly, seamlessly move towards repurposing those for centers of community and learning in those neighborhoods. Can you talk a little bit more about the repurposing process and provide me a little more comfort that there really is going to be a seamless process? Because we see in other districts, in other campuses, where they still are vacant after being closed. So.
Absolutely, and just to specify, we have 2 campuses that do not have a specific repurpose right now, which is Franklin Elementary and then also Woodruff. So our team will work over the next week to 10 days to put together a proposal opportunity to send out to the community, to the state, to say, what are the things that you could envision that could be a sustainable plan for moving this district forward. Now, the key on that, there's several things. It has to be sustainable. It has to be a proposal that actually doesn't end up costing the district, whether that's in a purchase or in a lease. So we're going to have to work those things out with the vendor or whoever it might be. way that we have to also look at this is that I have made a promise to the community, goes back into going out to extend to the community, that when we get those proposals in, that anyone that's put those in has to be ready to go be vetted in front of those communities, so that we'll take that in there and say, okay, we want you to give us feedback, what are the plus and minuses of the proposal, so that folks can weigh in on that, and we'll capture that as we try to create the very best fit for those two individual communities. And the last thing that I want to share is that we will keep all those schools on our facility master plan, which gives us greater control, so that we have a greater way to determine with our community in our recommendation to say this is a good fit.
You read my mind. That was my next question, and I think that's totally the right approach. And I've been talking, I think Mr. Curtis's first meeting here, I was talking about this because we knew there were going to have to be closures. And I think that was inevitable. It was always a question of which schools needed to be done, and you're totally right about the long conversations there. So that's just something that I think is so important to get right, and could help with some rebuilding of relationships with these communities. My final area is on your list of challenges. I do think there was a challenge missing, and it does relate to public perception, but not the public perception of the quality of the district, but the public perception by true believers in the district that they really don't have a voice in the district. And it does, of course, come back to the state takeover, and I think it has a major league dollars and cents implication, right? Because ultimately, votes will have to be cast that say a lot about what kind of resources the district is going to have moving forward. And so, I really am at a spot. Of course, I thought there were different approaches than takeover from the get-go. I really praise the tremendous work that both Mr. Kuris and you have done, and y'all's teams have done, to really begin to move this district in a new direction. And so I applaud that with state support, and I think that's a really important thing, bringing down that wall between the state and the district in a more healthy way. But I really think that it is time for us to think about the possibility of return. I had a conversation with Mr. Key yesterday. It is true in the statute that until every school is out of academic distress, the department cannot recommend a return. But I think it is also important that when you look at section 615-430 of the code, that there is, and I actually do have copies of it, had Ms. Coffin make copies, because I think it's important that while the department cannot recommend that we return control, under section F, which is on page 5 of this document, the state board does have kind of independent authority to take any of the actions that are listed in this section to address the public schools and school districts in academic distress. And so I think that and I think we have to be conscious. There are a lot of moving parts here, but I do think that it is crucial before the patrons of LRSD are asked to cast a vote, that there be clarity about when true local control will return. And so, that's my kind of plea to my fellow board members, is for us to begin moving towards that conversation. I think the time is there. I think it does not mean that the enhanced state control, the enhanced state support for these academically distressed schools would go away, but I think it is so important for folks to feel that they have a true voice before being asked to put more skin in the game in terms of tax support for the district.
Thank you, Dr. Barth. And Mr. Poor, you may be aware of this, but I had made similar comments at the time of our meeting with members of your patron, the commissioner, and members of his team, and was instructed that due to the appeal process, the soonest we could have that conversation is probably April of this year, but did want to let you know that I had planted the seed with Ms. Kaufman and the commissioner that at least somewhere in our agenda, very likely for that April meeting, to have a conversation, again, at the very least around timeline and what this looks like. Just as much as I know you've requested clarity in regards to the budget so that you may proceed, I think your patrons are asking equally for clarity on this so that they can discern how they proceed, and this would be an opportunity to do so. So I see Mr. Williamson.
Yeah, I mean, I don't live here, but I feel that I'm fairly familiar with Little Rock. And I've heard the comment several times that groups don't feel like they've had their voice heard or their opinions heard. I mean, how is that? I mean, I hear forums, community talks. I mean, heck, LRSD's in the paper every dadgum day. I mean, how can all these groups still think that their voice hasn't been heard? I mean, because something has to close at some point. We all agree on that, and I think these guys have got the best plan to figure that out. And I understand neighborhoods don't want schools closed. I get that. But if it's in the best interest of the district, i.e. the kids, then I don't understand why they continue to say that their voice hasn't been heard. It's a question to, all you Little Rock folks, I guess.
No, well, and actually members of the community have signed up for public comments, so I think they'll want to probably speak specifically to that question. And all I can share is lift up is what we've heard, what I've personally heard in the work. And sometimes it's not just creating the spaces for public comment, but it's in the decision making, and then it's the outcomes that I think that and again it's. Individuals, patrons from the community, especially these directed ones, and seeing a preponderance of folks, especially coming from our African American and Latino communities, and they've indicated around things that they need to see, things that and been pretty consistent in their asks, and not feeling that decisions have been made favorably in regards to those. And so it's not just that they're lifting up the hearing. And then I would say in regards to specific schools, the question I keep hearing is why these specific schools? And especially because they were high-performing schools, generally with strong parent involvement, just not feeling that they've received enough justification why these specific schools. And maybe there's an opportunity here, Mr. Poor, if you'd like to speak to the process by which these specific schools were selected. But again, I know members of the community, and it's not upon us to speak for them. Just again, it's in the decision making is the best I can lift up at this time. But yes, Mr. Poor.
Well, first, if you look at the schools, one of the things with the data that just came out with all of the information, and so this is new prior to the decision. It's interesting that every one of the children that are leaving are going to a school now that actually had higher performance last year, excuse me. So that's kind of new data, but we always felt like what we were engineering was creating a situation where it would be a better option for students for next year because of, when you go up over a certain threshold, and specifically this is the Stevens Franklin situation, that when they go up to over 500, it creates a whole nother level of support that comes in terms of just your staffing. So you have an assistant principal, you have full-time counselor, you have full-time nurse, you have things that are art and PE all there in the building working. So that's a positive. The movement of Franklin to Stevens, if you look first just at the numbers, okay, Franklin over, and I don't have my data sheet in front of me, I didn't anticipate that type of questions coming today, but Franklin has a 3-year trend of having numbers drop off in terms of their overall enrollment. You also have a 10-year, actually a 15-year span of time, the census data that looks at every one of the board zones, and this is a board zone that has also lost students over time. So that's even before the whole charter school situation, that you started to have an exodus out of these areas on both Franklin and Wilson. And the other thing is that if you go look at the density of our schools south of the interstate, that's where a bulk of our schools are. So, and that's where where most of our open spaces are. So that led to the choice of Franklin. Wilson, Wilson's probably a little bit more challenging because the one thing is that their enrollment over a 3-year span actually increased just a little bit. The students at Wilson are getting moved to 4 different schools, but if you look at the tight band of where these schools are, and this actually is true for Franklin, it's also true for the schools around Wilson, is you're not going beyond 2.6 miles in terms of the distance of where that community is having to access a school. So those are all things that we took into consideration in terms of the closure of the specific schools. The other 2 things are programs.
Dr. Barth.
I do want to just respond a little bit to Ms. Williams. I think the decision to keep Carver open was a huge, very important decision. I think there was listening, and so I'm in this decision, and I'm really wanting to hold this decision, which is already made as of yesterday. I want to focus on the future. And I want to focus on the future of these individual schools, buildings, so that they keep those communities intact. But I also want to focus on the future of the district so that folks can really feel moving forward that they know they're going to have a voice through elected processes, and that's going to make them more confident and more comfortable that that this positive progress that I think we are voicing really will move forward in the future. But it has to have some dollars and cents, we know, to repurpose the McClellan campus after the Southwest High School is built, so that can really be a first-rate middle school. And the students who have been at Cloverdale for decades deserve a first-rate middle school in Southwest Little Rock. And that's the end of the story. And we know we need dollars and cents for that to happen. And that's why I think it's so important for us to give people confidence in the future.
And I'll just, if I could, Madam Chair, Dr. Barth, the other thing is the promise that was made about Southwest High School. And I feel that's a big responsibility in terms of things that I heard right from the beginning, that we've got to go get that Southwest High School built. And so I want to do that. Dr. Barth's correct. We've got to redo McClellan, but then there's over $300 million with other needs. Could we just do Southwest High School? We could get there with us just as a district not going to the voters, but that would not be right in terms of not figuring out how to figure out McClellan and all the rest of these learning environments. We've got to step up on that, and I hope that that's something that we all agree.
Additional comments or questions from the board?
Well, I commend you for figuring out a plan that these improvements can be made without increasing taxes. I think that shows good stewardship on the part of the administrators, the teachers, and under your leadership. Specifically, before we got sort of sidetracked, you were talking about coming up with a planning time for teachers within the school, and I'm sure there are a lot of examples out there, but 2 in particular that we've heard about here is at south side of Batesville, the South Side School District there, and Blytheville came up with a scheduling plan, and it may not be anything that you all haven't, you got some great minds standing there that haven't thought of, but they can tell you what they have done, and Southside Batesville also is getting into careers, concurrent credit, all of those kind of things, working with their UACCB and Lyon College. So, and they are like you, they love to share the good news with whoever wants to hear from them. So I do commend you for your plan. I don't know if you were here yesterday when I shared that a lot of times when schools have to be closed, we have found, in my experience, not only as a patron but as a school person, that the adults get more in an uproar, and the kids just want to have like a counselor or a room for PE and art and music and all the things like that. So I think given time and good leadership on the part of their parents and their teachers, that they will see that this is good or better than what they currently have.
And appreciate the comments about the 2 school districts for us to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Abels.
Cannot leave without mentioning my visit to Henderson. And I already spoke with Dr. Wild earlier and told him that the plans that are in place there are so strong and so impressive that I wish every school in Arkansas could go see what is going on there. And the leadership there, they are so hungry to learn and do new things that principal blew me away with his eagerness to learn and do for his teachers. And I was just so impressed, and I wish that more people could go in and see the great things happening, and I just had to share that with everyone today. So,
If you don't mind, I will let Dr. Whitehorn make a comment about that too, but one of the things is that was the principal working with the Achieve team to say, we've got to transform the school, and it's not only about data, but how we're going to enhance student engagement, and the staff has so bought in. I also think that in some ways, and there's several people in this room, and even you as board members that participated, how we kicked off the year at Henderson, where people were coming in and cheering them on and giving them high fives as they came in. You know, that was a symbol of everybody in together. So I appreciate that. And Dr. Whitehorn, I'm sure will want to say something real quick about Mr. Williams.
Sure. I'm Daniel Whitehorn, and good morning, members of the board, Ms. Reith. I'm glad to be here. I don't have any superhero figures with me like Mr. Williams had, the Atomic Man or whatever, that I can set up there, but I can tell you that he is on the right track. The school is on the right track, so I appreciate your comments. A lot of work at Henderson, and it's not just this year, you know, it's the last few years. A lot of work has been built on a culture, building and sustaining a positive culture, making sure that kids get to class and there's a sense of urgency that there's something in the class to get to, that there's an engaging lesson, that teachers are working together, that they're collaborating, that the teachers are involved in what's going on in the school, that they feel like they have a voice, that they're listened to, and you know, they have what's called a CIC, Continuous Improvement Committee, and Mr. Williams meets with that group of teachers regularly, and he gets their input and makes sure they're involved in what's going on in the school. And the leadership team, you know, and I go to all their leadership team meetings, it has come a long ways too. They talk and communicate directly with the staff. They get feedback from the staff, and they make adjustments according to that. The thing, too, that Mr. Williams has done a lot of work on is utilizing data effectively. He asked, as Mr. Poore said earlier, he asked for help for that, and we have Dr. Perkins done a great job working with him specifically on utilizing data. So at every leadership meeting, they talk about specific data, and they and not only do they talk about it, they share that with the faculty in the faculty meetings. And so, yes, Henderson has come a long way, but really, it's the culture that has changed. You know, teachers want to come to school now. Students want to come there, and you know, there is a real feeling of community, of participation there that, you know, it's kind of exciting. You know, so I appreciate your comments, but I give credit to Mr. Williams and his entire staff for what they've done.
I just have to add to that, I was having a very candid conversation with the principal there, and we were sharing ideas about things that I'd seen in other schools, and he's just writing down, and I said, I can email that to you later. And he said, no, I need it right now. And he writes down his numbers, I need you to send it to me right now. And that's just how he is, and I think he knows the urgency of getting that school back to where it can be and where it will be, and he's excited about it, and the teachers there do have buy-in. I was very impressed, so.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Hale.
Yes, along with, I visit the school as well, and I'm very, very proud to say that he is doing excellent work. And about 3 weeks ago, I visited Dunbar and Ms. Thrasher, and because that's the community I work in, and trying to make sure our community is safe down Martin Luther King Drive, and Sergeant Willie Davis. And one thing I want, as we continue to move strategically in the future, is trying to adopt the OK program throughout all of our public schools for safety, particularly addressing the issue of young African-American men, retention, staying in school, and work very closely with Sergeant Willie Davis and the program. And I'm convinced that one reason crime dropped down Martin Luther King Drive is because of his involvement at Dunbar Middle School and Little Rock Central, as well as Hall as well. So I know funding was the reason. I was part of funding support through raising money to help hire the police officers to work with the program. But it's one of the best programs I've ever seen. I actually brought it here from California with Sergeant Willie, Chief Higgins, Eric Higgins, when he was Assistant Chief of Police here. And I think if we want to look at the issues that are affecting our city right now, that's starting very early in middle school, having that go to the feeder school, we'll see a total transformation in our community, because I know Sergeant Davis is involved in keeping the criminal activity down, because I know the parents call him on a regular basis when those type of things. So that's something I'm looking forward to working with you all to expand that throughout the Little Rock School District.
Yes, sir. I know Sergeant Davis. He's a very good man, and he's done a lot of things specifically to help out Dunbar and the culture at that school. So I'm very supportive of what he does in the OK program.
Thank you. Any final questions? Otherwise, we do have 2 public comments signed up for this. Thank you so much, Dr. Poore and your team. The first that I've signed up here is Dr. Anika Whitfield. And I was asked by our attorneys to say, and again, we're still working through our rules here, that generally we keep these comments, I guess, to about, or as said, they're kept around 3 minutes. But since I didn't employ that earlier today, I just offer that as just a kind guideline versus something I'll be measuring today. So,
sure. Thank
Dr.
you.
Whitfield,
My name is Dr. Anika Whitfield. I'm a product of the Little Rock School District. I attended in elementary school Terry. I attended Franklin. I attended Roman. I attended Booker, and I attended Horace Mann, and I attended Hall High School, and that's where I graduated. I'm a very proud product of the Little Rock School District. I'm a very proud citizen of the city of Little Rock. And I just want to start out by asking all of the board members, how many of you have visited Hall High School? Okay. I'd like to invite every one of you that didn't raise your hand to go visit my school, my high school. I'm the PTA president there, and we're suffering through a lot of challenges. Mr. Poore mentioned the fact that we do have a high turnover rate in some places, and Hall High School is one of those places that we have a high turnover rate. And it's not in the administration, it's actually in the teachers. And there's a reason why teachers are leaving our school, and I think that that needs to be very much addressed. When we look at the 2 schools that did come off of academic distress, we look at J.A. Fair and we look at McClellan. Those 2 schools actually had principals that left their school, and they've had new principals come in within the last 2 years. And in fact, McClellan had Mr. Burton was serving as the principal at the beginning of this school year, and yet they still were able to get off the list. And so though I know the instability in the administrative team can be a part of the problem, when you have a culture, as you were talking about, of people that love their school, that are dedicated to their school, you can see those types of differences happening. And I'd like to see that in the other remaining 3 schools. And I will always agree on Mr. Williams. When our district was taken over on January the 28th, 2015, he was one of the first principals that I met that had such confidence that he was going to do everything in his power to encourage relationships, encourage stability within his school, and he has shown that every time I've ever gone over to visit and volunteer at that school. And so I'm very pleased with what he has done. I also wanted to point out a few things and ask a couple more questions. So are any of the board members here, do any of those members have students in the Little Rock School District? You have a child in the Little Rock School District? I have 4. In the Little Rock School District? Great, 1. And then I'd like to ask the administrators that came from the Little Rock School District, do any of them have any students in the Little Rock School District? You have 1? You do? Right, okay. And so we got 2 people out of a group of, how many of you all is it?
Well, my kids are older, my stepkids, but they all graduated Little Rock High School,
Right. Well,
Little Rock School.
But this is my point. When you're doing, okay. So this is my point. When something is happening to you, it's very personal. When it's happening to someone else, it's not as personal. And so I heard some of the comments earlier about just kind of getting over with the fact that we need to accept that there need to be school closures. There still is not enough confidence from people like myself and other people in the neighborhoods and communities to have real clarity and understanding why it is that we have to close any schools. We've asked Commissioner Key, I've asked Mr. Poore on several occasions, how much money do we need to raise? There are people in our community that are willing to get the money to keep the schools open. There are people who are willing to sustain growth for the city, for the Little Rock School District, to make sure that it doesn't just keep it open for this school year, but that we would have it moving forward. We've asked if we could use the Bright Futures program and campaign in order to do that, and we were told no. And in fact, the question that came up about the confidence in the public came from that very statement when a parent at Franklin Elementary School asked Mr. Poore, based on her experience at Bald Knob School that was getting ready to be closed, and that school was being closed because they didn't have enough money. Their superintendent decided to work with the teachers, with the parents, and with the community, and within a month's time, they raised $2 million to keep their school open. Bald Knob, not Little Rock, but Bald Knob. So she was inferencing that if that could happen there, it could probably happen in the Little Rock School District, considering all of the swelling of support from the neighborhood and the community. And to that question, Mr. Poore, I don't want to misquote you, said that he had no confidence that we could do that. And so that's very frustrating to hear, that people are telling you as community members who love and have children and are products of the Little Rock School District, who live in walking distance of these schools, who volunteer on a regular basis in these schools, that when we offer you a solution, you tell us that you have no confidence that we can do the very things that we say that we're willing to do. When it comes to communications and open dialogue and getting answers, I'd like to go a little bit deeper with your question, Mr. Williamson. The 7 zone meetings that Mr. Poore referenced, they were called Listen and Learn meetings. So it was many of our hopes that we were going to go to this meeting so that Mr. Poore could listen to what was going on with us and we could learn together how we could create solutions. What we discovered was it was a listen to him for an hour discussion, and we were told that we could not ask questions, but that we were allowed to go over to tables and to discuss amongst each other solutions that we thought for the Little Rock School District and to write those down. That is not engaging the community. That's not showing me that you care about what I say if you're not going to allow me to ask questions. And because I'm so passionate about the Little Rock School District and the success of it, I did interrupt 2 or 3 meetings until Mr. Poore finally admitted at his 4th meeting at Henderson that Dr. Whitfield and the people that she's coming with keep asking for this, and so I want you to know that I'm listening, and so I'm willing to give you 10 minutes at the end of this meeting to ask your questions. But again, it was a 2-hour meeting, and we were given 10 minutes to ask questions. So that's really not good balance, because when you try to get answers, things get rushed. And at one of those meetings, Mr. Poore mentioned earlier that there have been miscommunications about ways that schools can get off of the distress list. And in haste, in responding to one of the pressing questions that I asked him over and over again, what's the fastest track? Mr. Poore said to us publicly that the fastest way to get off out of distress is to reconstitute a school. He told us that. And I later found out through doing more research that that wasn't the truth, that the truth is that the schools have to be restructured and prove some level of incremental improvement, as did J.A. Fair and in McClellan. And so, again, when you're in a situation where you can't get full communication, and I don't think that Mr. Poore meant to mislead us, but I can understand in the haste of that moment and only having 10 minutes to ask questions and get answers, you don't really fully get the answers that you're needing, and you don't get to ask the questions that you'd like to ask. As it relates to the $11 million that Mr. Poore mentioned, I would like to remind the board that September 2015, while Baker Curris was our superintendent, that Commissioner Key, I believe your name was on the contract that was signed to purchase the building, the Leisure Arts Building out in West Little Rock. That building, I'm sure you all know this, and so I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence or memory, but it was $11 million. And it just is so ironic to me that we need $11 million, knowing, as Mr. Poore has said, that we've been aware for a long time that there was going to be a shortfall in our revenue based on these segregation funds leaving. Our commissioner, knowing that, and Mr. Curris, who was brought to be a financial stability for our district, knowing that, would buy a building for the exact amount of money that we need in order to keep the rest of these schools open and to keep our school district moving forward. So that's very offensive, primarily because that school is in a very affluent neighborhood in West Little Rock that is predominantly consistent upon predominantly Caucasian persons in those neighborhoods and communities that will be serviced by it. And so it is offensive when you come into someone else's neighborhood, when you don't have children in the Little Rock School District, when you don't live in the city of Little Rock, to hear someone say to us, as our board members, say to us that we need to simply accept schools being closed. I will never accept a school being closed. I've seen what has happened to Ish Elementary School, where I have patients now who keep coming to my office telling me that my father taught them how to play football at an early age, and it broke their heart to come back at 40, 50, and now 60 years old to see that their school is no longer open, to see how many businesses have moved out of that neighborhood and were shut down when that school was closed down, to see how many of their neighbors had to be displaced and move so that they could get to closer schools so that their children could go to neighborhood schools. I've seen it with Mitchell. I've seen it with Wrightsville. We've seen it played over and over and over again, and it disparages our neighborhoods. And the very neighborhoods that people are so willing to call blighted, the people that have power cause the blighting. They take away our public education, they take away our public schools, they take away our resources, and make sure that those resources are never taken away from the more affluent areas. So it's extremely offensive when I hear things about accepting closure of schools when there are other options. And I just wanted to publicly say, if you haven't heard it or read it before, that I'm willing to help Mr. Poore and Commissioner Key and this CAB, the Civic or Community Advisory Board, to come up with a solution in order to create the funding that would keep our schools open, not just for this next school district, but to continue that progress so that we can make sure that we are more fiduciarily responsible for the Little Rock School District. And that's why we asked for more of a participatory budget. If there's any instability in the Little Rock School District, it comes at the helm of the Little Rock School District. The administrators that we've had, deputy superintendent, assistant superintendents, all of those persons have been in place for quite some time. But it's our superintendent that we keep having flux in, and every time a new superintendent comes in, that's a new program that happens. There are new people that get moved around. There are new principals. And so we're asking, I'm appealing to you all to appreciate the fact that we're asking you, number one, to look at the remaining 3 schools in the Little Rock School District and to visit those schools and see what the real problems are. What is keeping those schools from being academically successful? And how can we help move those schools further? Number 2, I'd like to ask you to consider our request for an impact study. Commissioner Key, I know you made the announcement at the 11th hour, if you will, yesterday evening. I was watching from my office and I didn't see anybody in the room, and I'm sure that there was somebody here, but I didn't see anybody here when you made your statement, and it was very offensive because I just met with you last Thursday with 3 parents from the schools that are you now allowing to be closed, and Mrs. Wanda Hamilton, whose husband is the namesake of Hamilton Learning Academy, Senator Elliott, and some of your staff, and we asked you specifically if you would consider doing comparative impact studies on the communities that would be impacted by school closures, as well as those communities with which students would be displaced. And you told us that you couldn't give us an answer one way or the other. You weren't going to make a decision. And in fact, that you weren't sure when you would make a decision. And so it was very disheartening that we came to you with an appeal to ask you to be our commissioner, to be our board chair, and to show that you actually care about the things that we are asking of you. And we had to hear it from, you know, Cynthia Howell or someone else sending us an email to ask, can you respond on what the commissioner just said? So it's very impersonal, and it's very hurting as a taxpayer, as a citizen of this city, that it's acceptable to close schools in predominantly Black and Hispanic, low to mid-income communities, and it's not acceptable to those of us that live here. So those are the things that I wanted to bring before you today. I hope I offered some clarity, and I hope that you will appreciate that we still are asking for this impact study. I sent the commissioner while I was sitting here an article or two about the negative effects of closing schools in Chicago, in New Orleans, in Michigan. So I'm hoping that you all will read that as well.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Whitfield. Thank you, and I apologize, it's just we have another commitment as a
understand.
board at noon,
Okay.
and I do want to let Mr. Levy as well, who signed up, speak, and then if there's any final closing comments from the board, but thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Whitfield.
Good noon. I'm Rabbi Levy. I'm a retired clergy, and it's always difficult to follow Dr. Whitfield. But I heard many positive things here today, and I was very excited about those with school programs and with the opening of some of the schools now off of distress. But having been on the Civic Advisory Committee last year, and seeing things that go on in the micro that are very good, they sound great, but in the macro, it still seems to me, and I've yet to be proven wrong, that we are heading more and more toward the charterization of the Little Rock School District. I read a report over the summer that says the first two things that happen for charterization are taking over the district and closing schools. And all I would like to say, with all the positive things, two things. One, that the city of Little Rock, I think, is willing to do an impact study with the Little Rock School District, if you would give them a chance, because Little Rock, as a city, is impacted by this as well. And I think, having gone to the city board meeting earlier this week, they are open and ready to do an impact study if you would be willing to engage with them. And the second thing is that I think it is now the burden of the commissioner and the board to prove to us that we are not in the process of charterization. With that, I want to thank you for your concern, and with it noon, I know you're ready to adjourn, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rabbi Levy. With that, I don't know if there's any quick, and it would have to be quick at this point, final questions, comments from the board. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn with the hope that there might be opportunities to engage with those that did offer comment here. Obviously, they're here because they want to engage in conversation with us. So as we transition to our next meeting, I hope that opportunity might be availed of. But seeing no comments, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, motion made by Dr. Barr, seconded by Ms. Chambers. All in favor? Okay. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much.